It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You woke up in the greatest country in history, and we're gearing up for a whole nother morning of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Phone lines are open, and you can guess what we want to talk about this morning. Tina Peters' sentencing yesterday, a combined 9 years behind bars.
Yeah.
Yowzers.
That was a lot. But,
so, you do the crime, you do the time, or excessive punishment against your political opponents. I'd like to hear from you. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Text the show on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. 720-819-5115. Blake Olson is out today, but we do have news for you. Let's kick it off, Bill.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. 73 lawmakers in the House and Senate are demanding answers from the DOJ about the thousands of non-citizens that have been removed from the voter rolls and the serious threat of potential voter fraud that's facing the nation. The lawmakers wrote a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland saying they were deeply concerned by the reports of non-citizens registering to vote and voting in federal elections. They asked about the issue back in July, and they said they never got a response. They want to know how many non-citizens have been prosecuted for voting and the steps the DOJ is taking to prevent illegal voting. The letter cites a couple of examples, with the 6,300 non-citizens on the voter rolls in Virginia and the 6,500 non-citizens on the voter rolls in Texas, saying nearly 2,000 of them had a history of voting. 2 Swedish teenagers are behind bars in a pretrial detention facility in connection with 2 explosions that happened in the overnight hours close to the Israeli embassy in Copenhagen. Prosecutors said investigators were trying to figure out whether the motive could be a terror attack. No one was injured in the blast that happened in a neighborhood with several foreign diplomatic missions, and the nearby Jewish school was closed after the explosions. The pair was ordered to be held for 27 days. They faced preliminary charges of possessing illegal weapons and carrying 5 hand grenades. 2 of the grenades blew up when the suspects threw them at a house near the embassy. It's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
KNUS forecast calls for continued unseasonably warm and dry weather conditions across the metro area in the central Rockies and the high plains. High temps for this Friday are sunshine, low to mid 80s. Not as cool overnight, lows low to mid 50s. Going to be a hot one for early October on Saturday. Fire weather watch in effect as well, highs near 90. Beautiful one Sunday for the Raiders-Bronco game, highs near 80.
Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Your KNUS forecast calls for continued
Welcome to the Jeff and Bill Show. Big news, political news, national political news coming out of Colorado yesterday with the sentencing of Tina Peters to a combined 9 years. And the judge had some words to say about her.
Yeah,
Billy, why don't you tee
did
that
he
up for us?
ever? Yeah, here is a segment in which he's basically going after Tina and saying that you were just pushing lies the entire time.
That you never took your job of clerking particularly seriously. You didn't complete the certification. One scandal after another followed you in your time as the clerk. And ultimately, it was a belief that the echo chamber in which you live couldn't be wrong. This thought process, unfortunately, seems to consume so many in our country, regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, or the like, that what it is we hear and think can't possibly be wrong. There are many things in my mind that are crystal clear about this case. You are no hero, you abused your position, and you're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again.
Yeah, he's not pulling punches there.
Okay. No, he's not.
Yep.
But I'm going to go to 9 years. I'm listening to what he's saying. I wrote down some of this. You didn't take your job seriously. You peddled lies. You lived in an echo chamber. You're a charlatan. You peddled snake oil. Okay, that's nearly every politician I know.
Yeah, but I bet nearly every politician didn't turn off cameras they were responsible for and allow someone access to.
I'm not disagreeing with the idea that she shouldn't be convicted.
Yeah.
All right. But I haven't heard yet the justification for 9 years. Maybe we'll get to that. But so far, everything he said pretty much falls under most politicians I know.
Yeah, he goes on, though, to say that because of the actions that she took, she was placing herself above the law. And that's a big deal.
This case was about your corrupt conduct and how no one is above the law. No one in this country has absolute power. Your position as a clerk and recorder, a constitutional position, does not provide you with a means by which to do your own investigation, to not listen to the judiciary, to not listen to the executives higher than you, to not listen to the legislature who sets the law as it may be. This is nonsense. Our system of government can't function when people in government think that somehow, some way, the power they've been given is absolute in all respects. And that's where you fell.
Yeah. But she didn't have the power to do her own investigation, to bring other people in. That's not something she's allowed to do.
I don't disagree with you on that. I'm still going to go to 9 years.
I'm going to have to go find the sentencing outline. I did not pull that this morning, but he walks through at the end what he's sentencing her for on each charge. I didn't pull that this morning, but he walks through it and says you get this much for this, this much for this, this much for this, this much for this. And some of it's going to be served in the Mesa County Jail and some of it's going to be served in prison because of the differentiation of the charges. But I'll have to see if I can find that. As far as what the
that's fine.
was.
We could look at that. I'm still going 90 here. So I don't know if you want to play the next one or you want. I'm happy to go on
no, you can talk
rant, but I'm okay. I read the coverage. I read the live tweeting. I listened to a little bit of it. I am not a Tina Peters supporter. Okay.
Despite what Kyle says.
Right. Defender. I'm not Tina Peters defender.
Yep. Morning, Kyle. Hope you're having a good day.
She
happy Friday.
Likely, from what my understanding of the case is, she did things she shouldn't have done. She should be prosecuted for those. Okay. But a lot of the language around Tina Peters is this is justifiable in an effort to protect our democracy. We cannot allow our political leaders to do things on their own that threaten the foundational government principles of this nation. Okay. That's a lot of the language used around this. And I sit here looking at that and I look at somebody who, probably likely did something wrong, should be convicted of it, should be punished of it, and then gets 9 years. 9 years in prison.
Yeah.
So then my mind spins up and I'm like, all right, well, how long do we sentence people for things like murder, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, rape. I started to look up all this stuff, right? You can get out off of manslaughter in like 6 years. You can get out on rape. I asked for general prison length of service if you're convicted and sentenced to rape, right? That's like 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, and now you did ask the question about how long they serve.
Right,
she's going to serve less than half, so she's going to get 4. Oh no,
she could.
No, based on how Colorado's parole system and everything works,
right?
She will serve less than half of the 9 years. So you really should be talking about real time in prison.
If you're going to do apples to apples, 4.5, 5 years.
Yeah,
so that's right around where we are with some violent crimes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I look at that, and then I look at what's happening to our state. Right, if we're really motivated to defend the sanctity of democracy in this state and the direction that this state is going, what I see happening is the really intense prosecution of some people and the just, well, we'll let you off. And in some cases, we'll even hand you a government check. What do I mean by that? All right. Let's start with our Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold. She mails out to 30,000 foreign people postcards to register to mail, right? She apologized. It was an error, clerical error, register to vote. Then she joins a lawsuit to try to keep somebody off the ballot that's duly elected, goes all the way, by the way, gets confirmed by our court system in this state that this is a legitimate reason to keep Donald Trump off the ballot, has to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court where she loses 9-0. So you had a Secretary of State and a Colorado Supreme Court that felt it was perfectly valid to keep somebody that was duly elected off the ballot. And yet we're going to scream about threats to democracy and put somebody in prison for 9 years. All right. And in addition to that, Jenna Griswold's going to get a check from the state. So that's where I start to go. This smells like a banana republic. Then you have a mayor who blows $100 million on illegal immigrants. That's taxpayer dollars. This is a guy that's likely to get elected again. We talk about preserving the sanctity of our democracy. 40,000 illegal immigrants have been welcomed into the city. You have brought with that Venezuelan gangs that are threatening innocent Coloradans. And we talk about Tina Peters being a threat to democracy. Then you have an attorney general, right, that won't prosecute the first few times you steal a car, but we're going to put Tina Peters in jail for 9 years, all because of a threat to democracy. Colorado is the third most dangerous state in the nation. We're number 1 for cocaine use. We're number 10 for human trafficking, yet it is Tina Peters that's a threat to democracy, and we have to put her in jail for 9 years. Governor Polis, right, allows this state to become a sanctuary state so that law enforcement will not work with ICE to deport dangerous illegal immigrants, but Tina Peters is a threat to democracy and needs to go away for 9 years. Channel 9 shoots a guy in broad daylight. Well, nobody goes to jail. Right, there's security guard.
Yeah, we have to
nobody,
because we have to do that. I'm just saying that legally, we can't say Channel 9 did it. We have to say
they hired the guy.
Yes, I know, but you need to outline that. Otherwise, you and I might find ourselves in a lawsuit. I'm just saying, because
they hired the guy.
Yes, they did, but Kyle's already a super fan of the show, so I'm just saying.
Bill preventing the lawsuit from the people who care about democracy.
Yes,
okay,
I'm just saying.
A guy hired by Channel 9.
There we go. There we're good. Now we're good.
Shoots a guy in broad daylight, doesn't go to prison, faces no time, gets off. Yet Tina Peters is a threat to democracy and needs to be in prison for 9 years. Someone shot the Capitol. They destroyed the Capitol. It wasn't open for 6 weeks with bullet holes in it. Nobody got arrested for that. Yet Tina Peters is a threat to democracy and is going to be in prison for 9 years. Again, I will say this. Tina Peters did not do the right things. She should be convicted. She should face a punishment. But when I look at our state and when it comes down to protecting democracy and the function of our government and the health of our democracy and all those people destroying the state who will never face any form of punishment and are even collecting checks from the state, yet Tina Peters is going to prison for 9 years. That's where I go, this is a banana republic.
Well, I would disagree with you because I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And this is a constant lament of most defendants. Most defendants that stand in front of a judge say, well, you're not catching all the speeders. You're not catching all the murderers. I only did a little bit of rape. You're not catching this larger rapist. I only stole a little bit of money. You're not catching all the people stealing the money. That happens all the time. Our judicial system is not necessarily equitable and fair. It's not a new thing. We choose and pick and choose which crimes we prosecute all the time for a variety of reasons. And I would assume that, we're talking about the people that shot at the Capitol, if they would have posted videos of themselves shooting the Capitol, if they would have gone on speaking tours talking about how they were upset and what they did that day to shoot the Capitol, if they would show up at symposiums about how to be angry and protest and how you need to bring your guns and shoot at the Capitol, we may have a different course and outcome. But that's what Tina did. She went on speaking tours talking about what she did. She was on video talking about what she did. She shared it with people. She went to the Mike Lindell cybersecurity thing. She was on private jets flown around the country. That's what she did. She talked about it and promoted the fact that she did this as a crime. And she felt she was innocent. She felt nobody had any reason to do anything to her. But that's part of the reason that she ended up where she is. And in fact, here, we'll wrap up here with the judge. And the judge kind of talks about why he feels that she's somewhat of a danger.
No problem trying to kick an officer. Your explanation about what happened is preposterous. It's on video. You have no problem lying to officers. It's happened multiple times. They're recorded conversations. It's just more lies. No objective person believes them. No, at the end of the day, you cared about the jets, the podcasts, and the people fawning over you. You abdicated your position as a servant to the Constitution, and you chose you over all else. Yes, you are a charlatan, and you cannot help but lie as easy it is for you to breathe. You betrayed your oath for no one other than you. And this is what makes Miss Peters such a danger to our community. It's the position she held that has provided her the pulpit from which she can preach these lies. The undermining of our democratic process, the undermining of the belief and confidence in our election systems. It's not about questioning it. No one says you can't question, you can't ask. It's completely different. And if you don't understand that distinction, then there's nothing I can say or do here today that will change your mind.
Yeah, he goes on another part. I didn't get to pull it, but he said that he's convinced that given the choice, she would do it all over again.
Yeah. And look, again, I'm not saying she's innocent.
No.
I'm looking at the length of the sentence going 9 years when 90% of what he just said could have been applied to Jenna Griswold.
Yeah, I disagree with that one. I do. And again, you're looking for equity in this, and you have to show me that Jenna Griswold necessarily committed crimes, and that's where this crosses. Is I can disagree, and with your analogy there, but also I agree with you on the fact that Jenna should not have joined the lawsuit concerning Trump. I think that was out of bounds. I don't think that's where the Secretary of State should have done. So I agree with that, but that's not a crime. It's not necessarily, and nor do I believe that it is necessarily a threat to democracy per se. But when Tina Peters, the stories that she was telling and the conclusions that she was telling led to election officials across Colorado receiving threats, that's an issue. I don't think there's much that Jenna Griswold did in that area that led to county clerks receiving threats. She probably got threats based on what she was doing, but I doubt that her behavior spilled out and created ripples inside of Colorado where other individuals were threatened. You have Gabe Woods that was involved there. He had to sell his house and is living in an RV in the woods somewhere because he can't own a house anywhere because people that believe what Tina Peters said showed up and tried to do things to him and threatened him. That's an issue. That's where she crosses the line into the threat. And it is because of the pulpit that she was given based on the power. And so she was paraded around this country. How many times did she appear on this radio show as a freedom fighter, as a hero who was seeking the truth? She appeared on national radio shows.
Not on this show.
But on this radio station. She appeared on this radio station numerous times saying that she was a freedom fighter and a hero. There were shows on this station that counter-programmed against that and counteracted that narrative. She went on radio stations and podcasts across the country, some national shows, being touted as this hero and this freedom fighter. And that's what the judge is pointing at. It's the megaphone of the pulpit that she has.
If you're justifying 9 years because of what somebody else did because they believed the lies of Tina Peters, then you're going to have to hold a lot of Democrats accountable for the assassination attempts on Donald Trump.
The other thing is, I don't believe that she's being held. She gets 9 years for that. What she's got 9 years for, in my opinion, is her complete and total lack of remorse. It was the fact that she had convinced the judge that given the opportunity, she would do it all again. And what I would say is this: if you had another defendant that was accused of murder, murder or manslaughter or rape, and if the rapist, the convicted rapist, is standing in front of the judge, and the judge looks at him and goes, I am convinced that if I put you back out on the street, you're going to go find somebody else to rape, or you're going to go find this woman again, and you're going to rape them again. That increases the sentence. You don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to give you the average sentence. You're going to increase the sentence because that person has shown the proclivity that, yes, they would commit that crime again. Same thing with murder, car theft, anything else. And that's where Tina fell. That's what the judge said, is the idea that she thought she had this universal power, and she shows no remorse.
What is she going to do again? Do you think people are going to elect her again? Is that what he's really concerned about? What else could she possibly do?
Continue to wander around the nation spreading these lies.
But that's not a punishable offense.
But when
you're allowed to lie in this country, I mean, it's just politicians do it all the time. We don't put them in prison.
No, but she's not going to prison for lying. She's going to prison because she committed.
We just talked about her defense.
I know, but she went to prison because she committed the crimes and shows no remorse. That's why the sentence is so long. If she would have stood there and said, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have put everybody through this. I realized this was wrong. I should have taken. She didn't even have to admit the election was stolen or not stolen. She could have said, I took power in my hands that I shouldn't have. I'm sorry about this. I shouldn't have. And it probably would have been less. This was wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I agree with myself.
And she probably would end up with probation, honestly, if she would have just said.
Well, I mean, a good example is Jenna Ellis, right?
Yes,
and Jenna Ellis is looking really good in a lot of the situations right now.
Yeah, looking incredibly smart
because
she
keeps her law license, and she had a tearful plea.
Yeah,
but 9 years. I'm still, guys. I'm just camping out on that. That is a long time.
Yeah.
That is, and when you're in your 60s, you're getting close to the remainder of your life.
And she'll serve about 4.5. But again, it's lack of remorse. If she would have said, I'm sorry, I apologize. She wouldn't even have said that. She didn't have to say she was wrong. She would just say, the actions I took based on my beliefs are wrong. And I shouldn't have. And
you know who's not saying that, though?
Yeah.
Jenna Griswold. And I consider what she did just the biggest threat.
Well, here's the thing.
She could have affected the entire presidential campaign in this country.
You're hanging on the words threat to democracy, where you really need to be focused on crime. What Jenna did, while I disagree with it, isn't a crime.
You don't think so? You don't think using your office to try to keep somebody duly elected off the ballot and the U.S. Supreme Court has to step in to stop you is not a crime?
No, I don't think that her joining the lawsuit is a crime. I don't think there's anything in that line that violates any law. I would just have to see what law was violated there to say it's a crime. Now, if we want to make it a crime, go right ahead. If we want to make the legislature come in and make it a crime, I'm okay with that. But it's not a crime. That's where this hinges.
I don't know about that. I feel like if you had
what law did she break?
She tried to keep somebody off the ballot that's duly elected. But she tried to use the power of her office to interfere with an election.
But
how is that not a crime?
What she did is join a lawsuit. That's not a crime. When you bring people into the machines, turn the cameras off, have someone else in there under a fake ID.
I'm saying it's not a crime. I'm not saying that's not a crime.
But I know. But what I'm showing you is that's an objective crime. I understand that you disagree with Jenna, but there is no objective crime. You need to show me the statute that she violated. Then we can have a conversation about it being criminal.
I disagree. I think she used the power of her office to directly interfere with the democratic process in an effort to keep an opponent that from a different party than hers off the ballot. And that seems.
But in that process, what law did she
government
break?
interference in an election?
Why
would that be?
But again, there's no
Why
laws.
wouldn't that be a law?
That's not. But this isn't. She can join a lawsuit. Her Secretary of State joining a lawsuit in this case isn't breaking the law. We can make it a criminal offense, but there's no statute that she violated. That's the difference.
Well, you need to
then show me the statute. Anybody, texters, phone calls, show me the statute. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm just saying I don't know the statute, and I'm not going to sit here and say,
and I don't know either.
Yeah, but I'm not going to say it's a crime unless I know the statute. I'm not going to assume crime.
It's definitely a threat to democracy, and it's a government official interfering with an election.
Yeah, but still, that's not necessarily why Tina Peters went to prison per se. Tina Peters went to prison because she's not remorseful and she committed actual crimes.
Yeah, neither is Jenna
Griswold. I know, but she didn't commit any actual crimes yet. That's what we don't have yet. We don't have an actual crime. You want to find an actual crime at Jenna Griswold and put her in prison? Fine. I'll stand right there next to you and say, yes, you should go to prison, but you need to show me the crime.
And Bill,
gotta show me the crime.
If the conviction and the sentencing was solely based off of the committing of a crime, I would grant your argument. But so much of the language they use in the length of sentencing and the pearl clutching that's taking place around what she did was the threat to democracy that Tina Peters poses. So the judge just went through that. We can't have government officials acting like you. Yeah, we can't function as a democracy with people like you.
Yeah, we can.
And so surrounding all of that is this big theory that what Tina Peters did was a massive threat to democracy, while you're allowing very serious threats to democracy not only go unchallenged in this state, but will hand you a government check as well.
Yeah, I disagree because we don't have any statute or anything that Jenna has violated. I understand that we're upset about it and I understand the politics inside of it, but Tina committed legitimate crimes and was convicted of those. She was, first it was done by a grand jury that agreed with the charges, and then she was prosecuted by, and I believe it's a Republican DA down there.
He is.
And so this is the idea that this is some sort of political witch hunt. And yes, what she did has phenomenal ramifications, far more than what Jenna Griswold did and failed at.
Oh, you think what she did in Mesa County is worse on a pretty serious magnitude than what Jenna Griswold did to try to keep Donald Trump off the ballot?
Yeah, larger ramifications.
I think what Jenna did was way worse.
I don't think so.
You could have actually affected the direction of the presidential race in this nation if Jenna Griswold had gotten her way.
Well, again, she didn't start the lawsuit. She joined the lawsuit, and that's okay. And as far as a statute, that's fine.
She could have backed off on that.
Yes, she could have, but there's no violation of a criminal statute. Tina Peters undertook a criminal conspiracy in order to get access to machines she didn't have the purview to, did a private investigation outside of what she's allowed to do in her office, and committed crimes in the process, including stealing somebody's identification. And because of that, she furthered a false narrative that has cost people hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's been involved in lawsuits. We've gotten sued here at our station. Our parent company, Salem, has gotten sued because of the lies. Fox News had to write a nearly $800 million check because of the lies that she was involved in. All of this is part of
that. You put all of that on Tina Peters?
No, she is involved in that downstream of misinformation, and she is one of the people that started it here in Colorado and was held up as one of the examples of a freedom fighter that was going to get to the truth, despite the fact that she never produced any truth. But
again,
over and over
I'm
and over again,
not saying that what she did was totally innocent, Bill. I'm not saying that what she did was innocent, but if Jenna Griswold had gotten her way, you would have had the power of an individual state to remove a candidate from the ballot based on their own worldview, their own political opposition, with no actual trial or finding of guilt that would have affected the entire future of this nation.
I think that's a little overly dramatic, but I can say that I can concede that, if she had gone through it, but she didn't. And the issue is that where Tina started was with a criminal conspiracy. What Jenna did is not a crime. We can talk about the implications afterwards.
That's
and what
crazy.
Happened. I know, but it's not a crime.
Think about the implications, and that's not a crime.
It's not a crime.
And yet I'm going to listen to this judge talk about how big of a threat Tina Peters is when Jenna Griswold could have changed the entire foundation of this nation.
Not her.
And it's not a crime.
It would have been Republicans and Democrats that started the lawsuit. She joined it. Again, you give this impression that she is the one that filed the lawsuit, that she is the one that led the charge.
She carried that thing.
But she didn't carry it. She joined it afterwards. She wasn't the person that filed it. This original suit was not filed by the Secretary of State. That she joined onto it later, and I do believe that is incorrect. But it didn't violate a statute. What Tina did started with a criminal conspiracy. That on its face is just simply different. That's why she's punished. Because she violated actual laws. Jenna didn't. She may have violated our sensibilities and our ethics as far as politics. That's what you're mad about, though. See, that's what you're mad about.
No, I'm not. I'm asking.
Yes,
I'm asking the question: who is the real threat here?
The person that implements the criminal conspiracy.
Who is the real
person that
threat
implements the criminal conspiracy and breaks the laws?
The foundation of this nation, to our democratic principles, all that. I think you have on one hand, you have somebody that. Yeah, Tina Peters did break the law, should face punishment, all that stuff. And then you have a whole lot of people that are actually seriously ruining this country, and they'll get a check from the government. All right. Are you a homeowner who's considering selling your home? Like Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team used their database of over 13,700 ready buyers to get your home sold for top dollar. Many real estate agents make promises, but very few have the proof to back it up. The Empower Home team has review after review from families they have served that back up what they say. They net their sellers 6.1% more money on average, getting their sellers $30,500 more in their pocket. No matter who wins the election, no matter what kind of market we're in, the Empower Home team brings both the experience and track record to help you navigate your home sale and get you top dollar. If your home doesn't sell, Gay Ribble will buy it. That's her guarantee to you. Reach out to my friends and realtors, Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. Call 833-301-SOLD. That's 833-301-SOLD. Or go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com. Give us a call on this Tina Peters case. Where do you fall? I agree with Billy that this was a crime committed, that the punishment was just, and that Tina Peters was a real threat to this democracy. Would you agree with me that, yeah, Tina Peters, rightfully prosecuted, sentence seems excessive, but it seems like we're ignoring the real threats to the foundation of this nation with people like Jenna Griswold, Phil Weiser, Jared Polis, and Mike Johnston. We'd love to hear from you. 303-696-1971 or text the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Wyo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. People across the nation are speaking out after DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas announced that FEMA does not have the funds to get through the hurricane season. In fact, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody said every American should be outraged over the comment, pointing out that more than $1 billion has been spent on illegal migrants. America's First Legal said they're not feeling Mayorkas' complaint because FEMA has been spending money giving housing and services to illegals, while Texas Governor Greg Abbott pointed out that there is a simple solution to the problem. Immediately stop spending money on illegal migrants and redirect those funds to areas hit by the hurricane. The death toll from Hurricane Helene is at more than 200, with some inside sources saying that number could rise as high as 500. A big show coming up for you tomorrow on Salem News Channel's This Week on the Hill. You can catch Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who will talk about the CBS vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, and why everyone, including Democrats, were giving the victory to the senator from Ohio. Plus, Johnson will give us the 411 on Iran's ballistic missile attacks on Israel and what it means for the region. That and so much more when you join us on Salem News Channel tomorrow for This Week on the Hill. Planned Parenthood has a sex ed curriculum for schools that pushes abortion and prostitution while saying it's not really possible to abstain from sex. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Wyo, Salem News Channel.
All right, kicking off the Friday. You'd think it'd be a relaxed Friday, but it's not. We're debating Tina Peters. Not that she's not guilty, but my contention comes down on the sentencing. Number one, seems excessive. And if you're going to wrap all the language into your sentencing with regards to the reason why 9 years, right? She's a threat to democracy. She's a threat to the functioning of this government. And that is why, and she's not remorseful. And that is why she deserves 9 consecutive years behind bars. I'm sitting here looking at our state going, well, there's plenty of people that are not only in power, that are threats to democracy, threats to the functioning of this government. They're actively trying to keep candidates off ballots, utilizing their office in order to affect elections. And yet they're actually collecting checks from the government. It doesn't seem fair to me. Let's go to the phone lines. Tony Littleton, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Hey, good morning. So I'm not really going to argue one way or the other on Tina Peters, whether the sentence was fair or not. But she is but one more example of somebody who followed blindly Trump's request and went down a path and has seen their career destroyed. I mean, we talked about this when we were talking about vice presidential candidates. And I said, there might be a lot that don't want to sign on with him because that doesn't work out so well for them. And I wouldn't be surprised if J.D. Vance's career, if Trump loses here, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if his political career ends as well. And Tina Peters is simply another example. I mean, Giuliani and all the other attorneys and all these people who chased this down this rabbit hole are now paying the price. And not to mention the hundreds of people who attacked the Capitol, and they're all serving sentences for the same thing, serve in service of Trump, and they're paying for it with their careers. And and ultimately,
Tony, let
I
me
think
ask you this question though. Okay, so they're in service to Trump. All those folks that engaged in the BLM riots, and you didn't see many prosecutions happen from that. Would your argument be fair there that that they should be justly prosecuted just as much as the January 6th people?
That's an unreasonable whataboutism.
No, it's not. The Capitol had actual bullet holes in them in the state of Colorado, and nobody got prosecuted for that.
Look, I don't know how many or who got prosecuted for BLM, but that movement. That's the
point. No, you don't know who got prosecuted for BLM. Look, if you want to hold the feet to the fire, right, of the January 6ers and Tina Peters, and you want to go, you cross that threshold. I've always said you hit a cop, you deserve to go to jail. That doesn't bother me about January 6th. I think some of those prosecutions are a little excessive, like the wandering grandma that was just wandering around praying. But if you're gonna go video by video and you're going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law every single person who crossed the threshold on January 6th, and someone shoots bullets into the Capitol down in Colorado, and it's so damaged it's not open for 6 weeks, and nobody gets prosecuted for that, and then we're going to spin that all around and go,
and I don't know
because they are all following Donald Trump. And look at what they got.
What information do we have about the potential shooters at the Capitol? Because there's an Illinois man who was charged with several felonies for firing a gun at the scaffolding on the outside of the Capitol. And the Capitol was closed for several days after it. But the issue is, these people walked in and they were on video. What video or what evidence do we have about the people that were firing there? So far, I haven't seen anything. No, but I haven't seen anything.
Exactly. You haven't seen anything. Yeah. Do you think that that was investigated at the same level as January 6th?
Yeah, probably.
No way.
Well,
dude, you haven't seen a video.
Hang on a sec, though. But
there are video cameras all around that Capitol.
Hang on a sec, though. The video would have to show the shooter. They fired with a gun. Last time I checked, guns can fire from at least across the street where the cameras may not be pointed. It could fire several blocks away. The person doesn't have to be standing outside the Capitol.
Everywhere.
But
you
they
haven't
don't
seen
have to
one.
stand out.
You haven't seen one. How about all the vandalism that took place?
I'm not saying the vandalism is justified. No,
I'm not either.
Yeah.
But there's videos of that. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen some of them. Yeah.
And who got prosecuted?
I think a number of people did get prosecuted.
Who?
I can go look at the numbers.
I would love to know
I
that.
have a list, but I'll see if I can find them.
I
know that there have been more than 15,000 people that were arrested and charged based on the Black Lives Matters protests.
Nationwide.
Yes.
And in Colorado, almost all of them got dropped. It was like 30 out of all the protests that took place, like 30
but that would still be people that would still
got
be people,
prosecuted.
But that would still be people being prosecuted for what they could prove and what the court said they could prove. Same thing.
Maybe
Go ahead,
regardless of how BLM turned out, and I'm sure people got prosecuted, but that has nothing to do with this case and these cases around trying to overturn an election.
You're telling me that everybody involved in January 6th was pledging their fidelity to Donald Trump, and that's the reason why their lives are terrible right now. What I'm asking you is that it seems like there are those out there that are willing to pledge their fidelity to the Black Lives Matter movement that didn't seem to get prosecuted. You don't seem to have problems with that.
I assume a number of people got prosecuted for Black Lives Matter. They were not trying to overturn the democracy. That was a protest about
Tony,
killing again.
And so that's where I'm going. You guys are actually motivated not by the idea of prosecuting somebody that commits a crime, but because you believe that what Tina Peters did, January 6th people did, was an actual threat to democracy, right? And it was going to break down the foundations of our government. And I'm sitting here going, Tony, Jenna Griswold was a bigger threat to this country and what she did to try to keep Trump off the ballot, because that would have set a precedent that
what did the Supreme Court say about the
Secretary
case?
Of State.
What did the Supreme Court say about the
it
case?
Was them
Why did
that
they
had
overturn
to
it?
Step down. They had to step in. It was 9-0 because you cannot have a Secretary of State.
Why did they overturn it?
I'm trying to explain it to you, because you cannot have a Secretary of State independently remove duly elected people from the ballot simply because they don't like them. And that was what Jenna Griswold did. She made up this excuse. She made up this excuse that, he's a threat to democracy. We can't have him on there. She never held a trial. She never convicted him of that. And so if you're really motivated, Tony, if you're really motivated to protect the foundations of this democracy, you should be just as mad, if not more mad, at what Jenna Griswold did than Tina Peters.
Let me ask you, if Trump loses and then that case goes on, if he wins, all the cases get dropped. But if he loses at the election and then he is prosecuted for January 6th, and the judge that you just played the clip of, that judge Chutkan could take that speech and deliver it to Trump. That exact speech almost to be delivered to Trump.
Too. Tony, we're just out of time. I really appreciate the call. 303-696-1971. We'll get to your calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Phone lines are hot, so we're going to keep with them. What do you think of the Tina Peters sentencing? 9 years combined behind the bars. She's a jailbird. What do you think of that? Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Let's go to Corey Parker. Good morning, Corey. Always good to hear from you.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Hey, I just want to set the record straight. I just want to remind you that in downtown Denver, during the protests and the George Floyd protests, Denver invoked a curfew. And after they had over 320 arrests for the curfew violation during the protest, Denver City Attorney Kristen Bronson dismissed all 320 cases for a sense of community healing. So that was not a question of lack of proof or lack of evidence, but just a political decision.
Weren't they also, though, they didn't do anything violent. They didn't have any crime. They didn't break any windows. They didn't punch anybody, light anything on fire. They didn't shoot the Capitol.
That's what a curfew violation is.
Yeah.
So the curfew was a law passed to prevent these things from happening. The mere presence of a protest crowd like that during our curfew is, number one, illegal, and number two, certainly spurred on and encouraged others to create those damages. But I just want to remember that. So when you talk about these protests, believe me, there's lots and lots of evidence towards all different types of things that were just swept under the rug. And this is in the Denver news clearly about that decision. So
and Corey, didn't the Denver Post have to Denver Post? My mistake. Denver police have to settle and pay out millions of dollars to some of those folks that were protesting?
Yeah, because they used, and some of them, even though we have a federal case recently, the federal judge said just because you use chemical weapons like mace or something doesn't mean you have actually seized somebody. So some of them have actually gone through even the federal court. So yeah, believe me, Denver's just a cash cow. I mean, once you file a case, they just roll over and pay out.
I'd agree.
Unless you're a Denver police officer. I know some of those guys that it goes the other direction for them. Corey, you think Tina Peters' sentence is just?
I think it's a little overkill. I believe a DOC sentence is appropriate, but I thought 7 years. I mean, if you read George Brocker's editorial today about the other justice sentences coming out of Denver, you got to question, scratch your head and look at the circus in the justice system in Denver. Oh, don't forget, Kim Kardashian has also spoken now out on the Menendez brothers.
Right. So, we heard that in the news. So maybe right. Kim Kardashian and Tina Peters will team up for a reduced sentence.
Well, remember, Governor Polis kissed the ring of Kim Kardashian and commuted the sentence of that trucker who killed 4 people. And so I wonder if Governor Newsom's also going to kiss the ring on the Menendez brothers.
Corey, great call. We're just out of time here. I did not have Tina Peters and Kim Kardashian on my bingo card.
Not today, not this morning.
All right. We'll continue. Matt Crane is joining us. He's up next. He's part of the county and clerks. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, October 4th. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. It's a beautiful day in the greatest country in history, and we're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions, critical analysis, most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after the news, Matt Crane, the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, spoke yesterday against Tina Peters, arguing, I believe, for a strong sentence. We're going to get a word directly from him as to the reasoning why and the justification for the sentencing yesterday in just a second. But first, news. Billy?
Yes, news not by Blake Olson. He's dealing with some stuff, so we're going to be doing some extra stuff today. We are doing some national news, so sit back and enjoy.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Kamala Harris is offering $750 to people impacted by Hurricane Helene to use on essential items like food, water, and other emergency supplies. However, many are speaking out that the amount she's offering is an insult, considering that the administration just announced $8 billion in funding for Ukraine and is spending nearly $1 billion on taking care of illegal migrants. Others who have lost everything because of the Category 4 hurricane are saying they actually applied for the $750 but were denied. J.R. Rand 1685 posting his application and denial pictures to social media saying, "This is my town. I was denied the $750 from FEMA. How does the VP and leading Democratic nominee come to my town and announce a pathetic $750 payment and I get denied? Make it make sense," he said. Hurricane Helene's death toll is now at more than 200 and is expected to rise higher as searchers make their way toward the hardest to reach places in the mountains of western North Carolina, where the storm washed out roads and knocked out electricity, water, and cell service to many. Officials in Georgia and North Carolina added to their state's tallies on Thursday, padding an overall count that has already made Helene the deadliest storm to hit the U.S. since Hurricane Katrina in 2005. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
KNUS forecast calls for continued unseasonably warm and dry weather conditions across the metro area in the central Rockies and the high plains. High temps for this Friday are sunshine, low to mid 80s. Not as cool overnight, lows low to mid 50s. Going to be a hot one for early October on Saturday. Fire weather watch in effect as well. Highs near 90. Beautiful one Sunday for the Raiders-Bronco game. Highs near 80.
Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Big sentencing handed down yesterday. Tina Peters, a combined 9 years behind bars. What did you think of it? Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Joining us on the Jeff and Bill Show is Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, Matt Crane. Matt, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading Twitter yesterday, but you went up and you were part of the sentencing hearing yesterday, even making some remarks. Can you give us a sense of what you said?
Sure. I was at the hearing yesterday. The DA had asked me to come up to provide an impact statement to talk about what Tina's actions had done, what they had meant to the election community, both here in Colorado and across the country. And so that's what I went up and talked about. How her nefarious activities did have a huge effect, not just on the operations of elections and undermining voter confidence, but it had a cascading effect where it led to death threats against election officials here in Colorado and across the country. It led to intimidation where election officials would be stopped in grocery stores or at church saying, hey, you guys need to pull a Tina. You need to do what Tina did. And when they said, you know what, no, we actually know our jobs and follow the law, we're not going to do that, that led to bigger problems in their community. So, it's immeasurable, the damage that Tina has done inside the election community. And so, I felt it was important for me to go and let the judge know about that.
So what she had done was, bring people in that weren't, and I follow the case a little bit, but all the details, and maybe you didn't follow all the details as well, but she brought people in, she took information, she put it on the internet, all of that under a cloud of, or I guess she believed that she was trying to expose corruption, but really she was being deceitful. And that's what she was prosecuted on, was not necessarily questioning the election, because even the judge said there's no crime in doing that. But it was all the steps she did, taking somebody's ID, copying the voter software, putting it on the internet. That was the actual crime. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, it was. I think that's way too high level to really do justice, Jeff, to what she did. So she orchestrated a plot with other people to go in and undermine her election processes. So it had been a standing operating procedure in Mesa County to leave their computers or their cameras on in the election space in Mesa County for over a decade. She had those turned off a week before all of this happened. She created false credentials for Conan Hayes, who she snuck in on a weekend to do a backup of the voting system, which the backup wasn't illegal, but the fact that she undermined her own security processes by turning off the cameras, falsifying government documents, and giving them to somebody else to get in. Then the image gets made of her voting system. It gets out in the wild, so she violated other things there. And then now that her voting system is out in the wild, the image of it, any bad actor can take a look at the image of the voting system, look for vulnerabilities in the voting system that they can try to do nefarious things with if they get direct physical access to the voting systems. And then, as the judge said yesterday, she lied repeatedly throughout the process. She was unrepentant about it. She lied to Secretary of State officials. She lied to law enforcement. There's a wide array of things that she did that were illegal that led to the sentence she got.
Talking with Matt Crane, he serves as the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. Now, Tina Peters did have one, I believe, former county clerk come in support of her, and that was the former Elbert County clerk. What are your thoughts about him and his statements, and is he misguided supporting Tina Peters?
Well, I think he is. Dallas and I were friends, for a long time, but I think that some of the actions that he's done have been irresponsible. Certainly not to the level of what Tina Peters did. But he worked with some of the same people that Tina did to make an image of his voting system, and then those, some of the people that they worked with talked about his image being looked at by hackers as well. I don't know if that's true or not. But when you get in bed with those bad actors, I don't know why he would have trusted them. But then to say that, and I'm certainly not here to defend Jenna Griswold, but when he goes after the state or the association for not having his back during that point in time, no other clerks agreed with what he did. So the association wasn't going to step forward to support that. So that's just one of those things. He's certainly entitled to be there. He ran good elections when he was clerk there. Rhonda Braun there in Elbert is running good elections now. But certainly we disagree with his position.
Matt, I want to ask you, just from a conservative perspective, how are elections doing in Colorado? People are concerned about them. They don't feel like they're that transparent. But then on the other side, you hear from Jenna Griswold and others, this is the gold standard. And we'll get to Jenna Griswold more in a second. But, what's your message to conservatives out there that, just in their gut feel, they're concerned about the election process in Colorado?
No, sure. That's a great question, Jeff. I think my message to fellow conservatives is, look, we have been inundated on conservative media and conservative social media channels with all of these messages about elections and elections being stolen that, quite frankly, aren't true. And what we're telling people is, come in, talk to your clerk and recorder. You can take tours of your election facility if you have questions. You can sign up to be an election judge. Jeff, a lot of people think it's the clerk and recorder that's behind a curtain like the all-powerful Oz pulling the levers to determine winners, and that's not true. I hear on the right, people say all the time, oh, elections belong to the people. They need to go back to the people. Jeff, our elections are run by the people, by citizen election judges, by our friends, our neighbors, our church members, our PTA members, our Elks Lodge members. These men and women who sign up to be election judges to do the actual work. They verify voter eligibility in precinct polling places and on mail ballots. They verify signatures on mail ballots. They tabulate ballots. They go out in bipartisan teams to pick up ballots from drop boxes with tight chain of custody and bring those back to county clerk's offices. It is our people who run the elections. So if you want to, I've been at a lot of places and in some rooms that weren't exactly friendly to me. I say, look, come in, ask questions, serve as an election judge. Oh, I'm not going to do that. Well, if you're not going to take the time and spend the time to come actually learn the truth from the experts and do the work yourself, I can't really help you. But these things are transparent. All of these processes, aside from the fact that citizens can do them, are open for meaningful observation by political party appointed watchers. Our canvass board is appointed by the political parties. Our testing and audit boards are appointed by the political parties. So it's a very open process. Now, does that mean that, we can't get better and that clerks aren't working every day to make our elections better, more accessible, more secure? Yeah, you're damn right we are. But is our position where we're at pretty strong right now? Yes, it is.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Matt. I want to talk about the length of sentencing. Look, I am not going to defend Tina Peters. I have never defended her. I think what she did was wrong, and there were likely other avenues for her to take if she felt that there was something wrong going on. Let's talk two things. One, what are the other avenues she could have taken if she wanted to raise concerns about the election? What can a county clerk do? And then I'm going to ask you about the length of sentencing if you thought it was just.
No, sure. So county clerks have different options. I mean, look, in June of 2021, when some of these questions about, by the way, when she talks about she had to back up the files that were deleted, the 29,000 files from Mesa County Report 1, the Windows operating system logs, those are not required for retention under federal or state law. And the fact that Tina didn't know that is not surprising considering she didn't take her job seriously. So all of this was done in an effort for something that she didn't need to do. But if she had that question about, okay, how can I do this? She could have did what the Larimer County clerk, Angela Myers, a Republican, did 1 month after Tina led the breach of her security office. Angie said, you know what? I'm not sure if these are records or not, so let me just be safe and see what I can do. She called the Secretary of State's office. A Republican called Jenna's office, and they walked her through how to back up Windows operating system logs. She could have called me. Other counties have taken images of their voting systems in the past. She could have just done this all above board, all in the sunshine of day, but she chose not to. She chose to lead a criminal plot to undermine her own security. And, it was foolish, it was reckless, and it was criminal.
And so in light of that, from your perspective, 9 years?
Yes. I think 9 years is entirely appropriate. When you look at everything she did, turning off cameras, undermining the own security of her own office and of the county, lying to other state and county officials, violating her oath of office, letting her voting system get out in the wild, where now the voting systems, not just in Mesa, but all across the country, are more vulnerable and less secure. That's one of the things I love about some of these quote unquote election integrity activists. The things they push for make our elections less secure. So, and Tina was right there with them. She's the standard bearer for that. She made our elections less secure. And then what she did to undermine voter confidence and put pressure, directly on clerks. Do I think 9 years? Yes, I think it's appropriate.
Talking with Matt Crane, he's the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, was speaking yesterday, providing a victim impact statement during the sentencing of Tina Peters, who's gotten a combined 9 years in prison. Matt, how's Jenna Griswold doing as our Secretary of State?
I haven't spoke to Jen in a while. I imagine she's doing okay. My focus is on,
but
helping
I mean,
our
from your
clerks
perspective, her leadership of the office of the Secretary of State. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
No, that's okay. In my spot, I have to be a little careful here as executive director of the Clerks Association. I always love when we have clerks that are supportive of locals, secretaries who are supportive of locals. But in terms of that, like I said, my focus right now is just making sure that we are mission focused on making sure clerks can deliver a good election. I haven't agreed with every decision the secretary has made, but the people elected her to that spot. So I focus on helping my folks.
Now, Matt Crane joining Jeff and Bill live. Matt, you'll recognize, is the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. Matt, one of the things that the judge said during the sentencing was the lack of remorse from Tina Peters, specifically saying, I am convinced that if given the chance, you would do this again. Tina, during her statement in front of the judge, didn't express any remorse and talked about how she was still really going after the truth. Question I have for you, just in your opinion, not as the head of the Colorado County Clerks Association, but in your opinion, is Tina Peters being sentenced and going to prison for an amount of time going to stop the misinformation and misconception about twisted, undue votes and the fact that we can't trust Colorado elections? Or is this, just in your opinion, going to convince people on that side that this was a political prosecution, they were going after our hero, and nothing will change? You're still going to get the phone calls and the threats and everything else. What's your opinion on the impact of this sentence?
That's a great question, Bill. I don't think that she's going to change, because I don't think she knows her job enough to know how wrong she is. And I think the judge was right. She will do this again. And in the courtroom, I watched the trial online, but it was a whole nother thing to be there in person. And she, even on social media, since she was convicted, she is completely unrepentant. I think she would have done it again. She's still going up and waving her reports around like they are anything meaningful and anything other than, a load of crap. And so I think she would do this again. And so, I've had people ask me, well, are you glad it's over? And, to your second point there, Bill, it's not over. The reverberations from this are going to continue on for a long time. And it's up to election officials. By the way, in Colorado, most of our clerk and recorders are Republican, and the weight of this has fallen hardest on them. It's going to be a years-long effort to try to rebuild voter confidence based on the damage that she's done. Like I said, it's immeasurable damage that she's done here.
Yeah, she is, in my mind, and I understand there isn't the appreciable damage like, shooting bullets at the Capitol or lighting something on fire or taking someone's life or their property or something like that. But she has done damage to the trust and the voting process inside of Colorado. And we now have people that, some listen to this show, that are convinced that the voting is twisted here in Colorado and you can't trust it. Here's a question. This is more esoteric, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want. But in my travels and the conversations we have here on the show, I find a lot of people that believe in the election conspiracy theory that it was manipulated and the votes were changed, yet they continue to vote, which is weird. They continue. Why do you think that cognitive dissonance exists with people that say, this is obviously stolen, we can't trust the people in charge, all the county clerks are awful, and they're twisting the vote, and they're changing the votes inside the machine, but I'm still going to deliver my ballot on that day? What about that cognitive dissonance?
Well, it's not even that. It's not even that, Bill. A lot of the people who have been driving that here in Colorado, think Ron Hanks. He can't wait to get his name on a ballot. How many times? He's run for office twice now since 2020, after claiming 2020 was stolen. And if he thought he was rigged, why would he put himself through it? So, there is either some cognitive dissonance or some acknowledgement that what they've been putting out is dishonest. Again, you would think that if the game was rigged, why would you put yourself through it? But like I said, he can't wait to throw his name on a ballot, and we'll probably see it on a ballot again at some point. So, I think that, I think there are good, honest men and women who have concerns because this has been driven. It's a political and financial movement that's been driven, this election lie stuff, and it's been pushed on conservatives. And so people of goodwill, they are distrusting. They do have questions, and we want to answer those questions. But you also can't underestimate the impact it has. And I think you guys have heard me talk about this a lot, but it's real. We as Republicans lost control of the U.S. Senate in 2021 when we lost those Georgia Senate runoff elections because Trump and Lynn Wood and others were running around saying, don't vote, it'll expose the algorithm. There was no algorithm. We lost control of the U.S. Senate. So again, all of the damage from this, and this goes way beyond Tina Peters, all of the damage of these lies about our elections have been catastrophic, not just for the country, which is most important, but for the Republican Party and our ability to stand up and get people elected to push back on the agenda that we'd all like to push back on.
Now, Matt Crane, Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, pretty simple question, but it's weighted. How does this end? How many years or even generations is it going to take for Coloradans or even Americans to trust the voting process again? How long is it going to take?
Bill, I wish I had an answer. It's going to be more of a marathon than a sprint. And look, it doesn't happen when, President Trump is out this week. Somebody asked him if he's going to trust the election, and he says, ask me in 35 days. That doesn't help. And the amount of weight and pressure that puts on election officials, men and women who go to work every day and put on good, honest, and accurate elections, they don't have a mouthpiece, a microphone like he does. But right there, just like he was doing, before, he's planting the seeds for crying about stolen elections. And that it's just a cascading effect that it has on election officials and on everyday citizens who get bombarded with that. Unless they're in and coming into election offices to learn what's going on, they don't know. So it's, I'm worried that it is going to be much more of a marathon than a sprint to rebuild voter confidence.
Well, and I think that there's a few things going on here. Look, Matt Crane and the county clerks and recorders, their job is to run the election smoothly, to follow the rules that are set up. And I think conservatives are right to sometimes question whether or not the rules are fair. So, for instance, when you import 10 million illegal people into this country, that's going to affect the census, which is going to affect the number of electors that happen in particular states and congressional apportionment. When the state of California says we're going to ban localities from checking IDs with regards to voting, not just require IDs, but actually ban counties from being able to require them themselves. That seems like they're messing with the rules. So, yeah, I understand there's a lot of impetus upon conservatives to take the elections to be free and fair. But I think it's right to challenge when the left tries to write the rules in their favor. And Matt, I know you're trying to run free and fair elections, and you probably don't get into the rulemaking, lawmaking side of it. But I think that's got to be part of the equation if we want people to take our elections seriously.
Look, Jeff, I don't argue with that. It's fair to question laws that don't seem to make sense or are fair. And I'm certainly not here, Jeff, saying, "Hey, trust me," and just walk away. We've never said that. We've tried it, especially here in Colorado, to build a process that's transparent and that citizens actually run and are involved with. So my only plea is, you don't have to trust, but you can certainly come verify. And if you're only getting your information from a social media echo chamber or bad actors that are taking advantage of election lies for political and financial purposes, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to the election process. Come in, see what happens yourself, form an opinion yourself, verify yourself, and I think you'll see that. We've had clerks who have invited in people who have thought the election was stolen to be election judges. And when they come in, they say, "Hey, you know what? Thanks for allowing us to do this. What I heard here or what I heard there is absolutely not true." And that's a big win. That's a big win.
Matt, I love that. I think that's a really critical message for people to hear. So how do they do it? What's the next step for them if they were interested in doing that in this upcoming election?
Yeah, call your county clerks. They're hiring election judges right now. It's a little far in the process. So some counties may be getting close to what the number they need, but call, get involved. Talk to your political party, talk to your county chairs, have them appoint you as watchers for the election where you can go in and watch signature verification. You can watch tabulation. You can observe all of these things to see what's happening. We would love that. We love when more people come in and take a look at our processes.
Matt Crane, Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. Very helpful. Thank you so much for taking time to be on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a great morning.
You too. Have a good weekend.
All right, coming up next is going to be Jimmy Sengenberger. He's an investigative columnist with the Denver Gazette, was following this case front to back in the courtroom yesterday. We'll ask him about what he saw. Look, if you're like me and you know that living in Colorado means dealing with unpredictable weather, hail, snow, heavy winds, you name it, we've got it. That's why you need a roofing company you can trust, and that's Colorado's Best Roofing. They're local, family-owned, and have served the Denver area for over 12 years. They understand our unique climate and know how to build a roof that lasts. Whether you need a repair after a storm or a whole new roof, Colorado's Best Roofing has got you covered. And here's what I really love. They offer a free, no obligation inspection. They'll come out, take a look, and give you an honest assessment. No pressure, no gimmicks, just straight talk from the pros. Plus, they work with your insurance company to make sure you get the coverage you deserve. So don't wait until the next big storm hits. Give Colorado's Best Roofing a call today at 303-797-7663 or visit them at roofingcolorado.com. That's 303-797-7663 or roofingcolorado.com. Trust the best. Colorado's Best Roofing. What do you think of Matt Crane? Give me a call or a text message. We're going to have Jimmy coming up next. We'll get to the calls, but if you can't get through, text the text line. Dan Kaplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. 73 lawmakers in the House and Senate are demanding answers from the DOJ about the thousands of non-citizens that have been removed from the voter rolls and the serious threat of potential voter fraud that's facing the nation. The lawmakers wrote a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland saying they were deeply concerned by the reports of non-citizens registering to vote and voting in federal elections. They asked about the issue back in July, and they said they never got a response. They want to know how many non-citizens have been prosecuted for voting and the steps the DOJ is taking to prevent illegal voting. The letter cites a couple of examples, with the 6,300 non-citizens on the voter rolls in Virginia and the 6,500 non-citizens on the voter rolls in Texas, saying nearly 2,000 of them had a history of voting. 2 Swedish teenagers are behind bars in a pretrial detention facility in connection with 2 explosions that happened in the overnight hours close to the Israeli embassy in Copenhagen. Prosecutors said investigators were trying to figure out whether the motive could be a terror attack. No one was injured in the blast that happened in a neighborhood with several foreign diplomatic missions, and the nearby Jewish school was closed after the explosions. The pair was ordered to be held for 27 days. They faced preliminary charges of possessing illegal weapons and carrying 5 hand grenades. 2 of the grenades blew up when the suspects threw them at a house near the embassy. It's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Bill Show. Joining us to know the name. Come to the show and think U.S. investigative columnist with the Denver Gazette, Jimmy Sengenberger, following the case in the courtroom yesterday. Jimmy, give us a sense of what happened with Tina Peters and her sentencing yesterday.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, well, as you know, I've covered this story since the very beginning of it breaking in August of 2021. So to see the culmination of this in person down in Grand Junction was indeed really fascinating on so many levels, especially because I'd never been in the courtroom for a sentencing before or anything criminal like this. So it was something that was educational for me as well. But I would just say you could really cut the tension with a knife. What was fascinating as well was the progression of events. So Tina Peters' defense team didn't know exactly how this process was supposed to go yesterday, to the point where the judge even had to explain, this is what I said is going to happen today and how we're going to proceed. They weren't ready with their witnesses, their character witnesses for Tina. So what they had to do was begin with the lawyer speaking, and then it ended up being, and I thought this was kind of better, really an alternation of different speakers from the defense and the prosecution, including Matt Crane, who you guys were just talking with, who I agree with a lot of what he said. And you have they had this thing where it was almost like a rebuttal was going on in real time, even though that wasn't the intention. And it did end up, I think, making for something a little bit more engaging and interesting, because it wasn't just one side and then the other. Although, of course, the most riveting parts were when Tina herself got up and spoke for about 40 minutes. And then when the judge gave his excoriating remarks explaining why she was being sentenced to 9 years behind bars.
Jimmy, what did they take Tina Peters into custody right then and there? What was the look on her face? What was her reaction when the sentencing came down?
So I was behind and to the side, so I couldn't see her face from the angle that I was at. But my understanding was that she was taken into custody then or just shortly after. I mean, you could see as the judge was speaking, 3 different law enforcement officers were at the ready, as though they were getting situated to make that arrest or to take her into custody and to remove her. And that was something that you could notice as the judge was progressing. They were getting more in a position, 2 guys on one end and then one other on the opposite end. And so you could tell something was up, and it probably wasn't her getting just probation.
Now, talk about the judge's remarks. He seemed to inject into his sentencing a personal disdain for Tina Peters. Talk about the feeling in the room, the sense you got from his remarks.
I'm glad that you said that. Now, I would say in terms of the feeling in the room, it really depended who was on what side. And I don't necessarily mean literally on what side of the courtroom, but where you fell on Tina Peters' actions. If you were in favor of the judge's decision here and thought she deserved the sentence, then you probably were inclined to go, all right, this is good to hear that the judge is recognizing things that I accept and understand. Whereas on Tina's side, you're probably thinking something along the lines of what you just said. This is a personal animosity towards Tina Peters. I disagree with that. I think this was fundamentally a response to the way in which Tina herself conducted this whole thing, including the sentencing yesterday, the way in which for the past several weeks since her conviction, she has gone on multiple podcasts and on social media, not just insisting that she is innocent, but showing no remorse, showing no contrition, and really doubling down in so many respects. And then during her 40-plus minute diatribe yesterday when she spoke, she tried to throw everything against the wall to see what would stick about different experiences that are heart-wrenching that she has had in recent years, but they don't play any role in what she did and what the consequences would be, because she even doubled down. She was making known some of her thoughts on the report. She argued with the judge multiple occasions with such intensity that the judge was just clearly exasperated and going, what in the world? You are not just not showing remorse, but you're not showing respect towards the judicial system. And I think there was a lot of truth there, and that he did really just underpin with his words the attitude that Tina was approaching this thing from the before the trial on through sentencing. And there were some things that he said that probably needed to be said.
Oh, Jimmy Sangenberger, former KNUS host and investigative journalist with the Denver Gazette, joining Jeff and Bill live. Got a lot of text messages of people saying they missed your voice here, young Jimmy, and we appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about, Tina's lack of remorse, because it was that 40-minute speech. She started off and talked about how the prosecutor may have lied about whether or not she was recording on an iPad, which wasn't germane to the conversation or the sentence at all. I want to ask you about Tina's lack of remorse as you've been following this over the course of several years now. How large do you think her lack of remorse played in the sentencing? What I mean by this is 9 years seems like a lot for someone with a nonviolent past committing a nonviolent crime. However, the judge outlined he's convinced that if given the chance, she would do it all over again. How impactful was that lack of remorse, do you feel, over the course of this journey with her in the sentencing?
Now, I think that's a very important question, and that undergirds a lot of this, Bill, because when we look at the judge's ruling or sentencing here, he really broke down very meticulously his reasoning in saying probation is on the table, but here's why she doesn't qualify for probation. The community corrections isn't really on the table, but even if it were, it wouldn't apply here. No, the third option is prison time, and prison is called for, and here's why, and really broke that down. And he explained in part that the point of sentencing, guys, is about deterring behavior from you, the guy or gal who has been convicted, and other people. So, for example, other clerks around the state or around the country who might be inclined to engage in illegal means to do something that they believe or claim to believe is just part of their duty. And he also talked about, look, this has to be a way for you to learn reconciliation, to learn to accept what you did, at least on some level, even if you don't believe, you've maintained your innocence and you didn't want to accept the guilty plea. You still have a certain point where you have to demonstrate remorse, that you understand the gravity of what you did. But this really is the child who went ahead and did something wrong, and you, let's say, take their iPad away for a couple of days, and they're not upset about what they did. They don't think, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have done that. They think, man, why did mom and dad take my iPad? That's exactly what Tina Peters was upset about, and she made that very clear in her own remarks before the judge sentenced her.
Now, Jimmy Sangenberger joining Jeff and Bill live, works with the Denver Gazette. You hear his voice here on KNUS and elsewhere in the market. We're so happy that he's returned home with us. I want to focus on the danger part of the judge. You were there in the courtroom during the sentencing, and the judge leaned into prison time for her, in part because he felt that she is still a danger to the community. Now, average person that just browsed upon our show this morning would think, well, this is a county clerk that, again, didn't do anything violent, doesn't have a history of violence. How could she possibly be a danger to the community? Can you walk us through what the judge said about her being a danger?
Yeah, I found that really interesting because normally you wouldn't hear for nonviolent offenses the idea of danger. But I think Matt Crane laid out some of this pretty well in his conversation with you guys about the impact that this has had on the clerks and recorders across the state, that they have received death threats. They have received all kinds of general threats. There's been a fostering of such distrust that really goes down to what has happened here in Colorado, spreading across the country, with Tina Peters being the real focal point of that. And so if she was allowed to just lightly go online, to continue to spew the stuff that she has done on the various platforms that she has, to act as though she is the victim, then she is able to promote things that simply aren't true, and bad behavior would be seen as justifiable because you could get away with it. So the danger isn't that she physically might harm somebody, but it is the consequences of what she could do moving forward, because we have seen what she has already done in the past 3.5 years, from her actions in May of 2021 to today.
Now, Jimmy Sangenberg, I want to talk to you about the crowd. You and I both love live music. You actually have the talent with the harp to get up on stage and perform in front of crowds. This was somewhat of an event, somewhat of a spectacle in the sentencing yesterday. Can you talk to listeners about the crowd inside the courtroom, but also the scene outside the courtroom? Were there any people protesting one side or the other? Were there lots of pro-Tina people? What did you see? Give us the flavor.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I was looking back, first of all, at some points there could have been a nice harmonica soundtrack. I would have been happy to oblige.
Yes.
Had Judge Barrett asked that, I had some harps in the car. But when I arrived, I was looking around. Was there any protest going on? And I didn't see any. I got there really early beforehand, and there were just a smattering of people, a few people who appeared to be supporters of Tina Peters for the most part. A number of media folks showed up, myself included. And then when we got in there, there were over 100 people there. They included folks ranging from the defendant, from Tina Peters and her legal team, to the prosecution team, to media folks, and then to the people who gave the witness impact statements and the character witness statements, and in some cases their families. So that overlaps with people who were supportive of or concerned about Tina. I don't know that I could break down 50-50 or how the room broke out, but I was surprised, I would say, at the lack of a noticeable support for Tina outside of the courtroom. I kind of expected maybe there would be a little bit more of a show, but that was in the courtroom. And I would say for the most part, people were very, there wasn't much engagement. The judge throughout the trial had chastised people in the audience for making comments, for wearing hats, for doing things like that aren't allowed in the courtroom. And that wasn't really brought to bear this time. I think there was a lot more respect from most of the folks who were there in the room. Tina Peters was the one who was most, I would say, distracting, in the sense that multiple times she was, folks watching the live stream, clearly laughing during some of the witness statements. So I think I think it was just interesting to sort of notice that dynamic.
Talking with Jimmy Sangenberger, he's an investigative columnist with the Denver Gazette. Look, Jimmy, I don't disagree that Tina Peters did something wrong. I don't disagree in her conviction. I don't even disagree with the idea that she should be sentenced. But I look here, for instance, at Jenna Griswold this morning. I guess this was yesterday. Colorado will not allow anyone to threaten our elections. So what they've done is they wrap, what Tina Peters did in this great language about preserving our democracies, protecting our elections. At the same time, I believe you can make an argument that if Jenna Griswold had gotten her way, a Secretary of State in any state, without convicting somebody, could take somebody duly elected off the ballot and would have had a massive impact on our elections. The U.S. Supreme Court shuts it down 9-0. So we're going to send Tina Peters away for 9 years. And this month, Jenna Griswold will collect a check from the taxpayers of Colorado. That's where I get into the banana republic stuff, where it feels like one side can perfectly threaten an election and collect a paycheck, and the other side threatens an election and gets sent to jail. What are your thoughts?
I'm really glad that you asked this question, because I have a couple thoughts. First of all, Jenna Griswold, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, is and always has been a hyper-partisan hack. She is unbecoming of the office of Secretary of State for a variety of reasons that would take another interview. And I've done a lot myself in exposing things that I think are legitimate concerns and issue areas about Griswold. But I have to tell you that Jenna Griswold, insofar as this case is concerned, despite how she wants to make it about herself, she tries to make everything about herself because she's the hero against the big lie. Well, the reality is that Jenna Griswold is utterly irrelevant to this case because we have a district attorney in Mesa County who is a Republican. And I interviewed him yesterday, about half an hour after the trial, that I was able to get with him and ask him some questions for my next column, which will be out on Sunday. And he said this. It's not in my column, but I'll share it with you guys. I always saw my party as the party that was about law and order. And to have one of our fellow Republican elected officials just so blatantly talk about how she's the elected official and she alone gets to decide things, that's not how our Constitution works. That's not how our law works. This is all about checks and balances, and it's about making sure that nobody has absolute power. This is a Republican district attorney. At the meeting yesterday, or the sentencing yesterday, two of the character or the witness impact statements were by Cody Davis and Scott McGinnis. Cody Davis is a current commissioner in Mesa County. Scott McGinnis, former congressman, of course, ran for governor in the past, and he is a former county commissioner there in Mesa. Then Matt Crane, who you just heard from, lifelong Republican, a conservative guy, served as the Republican Arapahoe County clerk and recorder. They are all Republicans, as were Jerry and Wendy Wood, who both gave witness impact statements, which I thought were very powerful. So the idea that this is some partisan thing on the part of Jenna Griswold gives her more credit than she deserves. And when she wants that popularity, Jeff, when she wants to be recognized as someone who got the elected official who was corrupting our elections, that dirty Republican big lie person, well, that just feeds into exactly what she wants.
Yeah, I understand that. And again, we're not saying that Tina Peters shouldn't have been prosecuted, shouldn't have been sentenced. But if you want to wrap up your motivations and all that, not yours, Jimmy, but Phil Weiser's, Jenna Griswold's motivations, and trying to take down anyone who threatens our elections, I think that they are equally, if not more, of a threat to our. If Jenna Griswold had gotten her way,
no way,
you would have had a serious constitutional threat to our elections, and she's going to collect a paycheck.
Her way?
Well, she could have.
If it gotten her way.
The Colorado Supreme Court agreed with her, Jimmy. Supreme Court.
Talking about
the U.S. Supreme Court that had to shut that down 9-0 to keep Donald Trump on the ballot. Jimmy, we're just out of time. We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
to the Jeff and Bill show. We got into the good part with Jimmy, and then it ran out of time.
Yeah.
Billy's
Ring
like
it, clock.
literally in my ear going, we need a break, we need a break,
Yes.
we need a break. And
No
I'm
time
going,
left.
well, I got Billy, or I got Jimmy, and we're having a great conversation. And thank you to Matt Crane. Thank you to Jimmy Sengenberger. Thank you to everybody that joined in this debate, because look, this is what you're not going to get anywhere else in media in Colorado. You'll get definitely with 9 News and the rest of them about how terrible Donald Trump and Tina Peters are and all that stuff. And again, I don't disagree with the sentencing. Maybe the length of the sentencing, but the conviction and of Tina Peters. And I think there were other routes, and Matt Crane brought those up. If there were concerns that Tina Peters had, there were other routes she could have done it. The county clerk in, what was it, one of the other counties brought up those concerns. I don't disagree with that. But 9 years and then bathing the sentencing in this effort to protect democracy while you have a Secretary of State who actively worked to keep Donald Trump off the ballot is going to collect a paycheck from taxpayers. If you're going to defend democracy, do it entirely. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, October 4th. Normally, Fridays are pretty chill, but then you make national news with Tina Peters being sentenced to a combined 9 years in the clink. No, Billy and I used to joke as to whether or not Donald Trump would run the yard in the clink. What are your over-unders on Tina Peters running the yard?
Oh, no way.
Probably not good.
No, not good at all.
Kind of points out she's not violent. She's not a violent person. She did kick a cop, but she's not. I mean, she's going to go to 9 years.
There are a lot of people that are convicted of non-violent crimes that are in prison as well. So it's not just
Bernie Madoff,
just violence. Yeah, I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried, a whole bunch of people that have to spend time in prison for non-violent offenses.
9 years. Again, if we were a state that went after. And George Brockler's got a great tweet about this. There's, somebody tried to shoot somebody, 5 attempts at murder, and they're getting 7 years. He's just like, oh my gosh! Yeah. We bounce all around on this state.
Different judge, different county, and that's part of the problem inside of this is that our judiciary is given leeway on some of the rulings.
If it was Denver, it would have been 25 years.
Could have been, yeah. It might have been. Absolutely. And that's part of it is with different jurisdictions and different judges. It's hard to say that this one judge and Brockler and other people that are involved in this understand there are judges. Some judges are real hard asses and some judges aren't. Some judges will allow certain things in the courtroom and others won't. And that does play into what happens inside the courtroom and also does play into sentencing because judges, just like everyone else, are human.
In just a second, right after the news, we're going to switch directions here because I found this story fascinating. Former Colorado parental evaluator indicted for alleged crimes in child custody cases. A grand jury has handed up a 15-count felony indictment against Shannon McShane, the former parental evaluator who last year relinquished her psychology license while dozens of other custody cases in Colorado descend into chaos amid allegations that McShane falsified her credentials needed to accept court appointments. Okay, that was the headline. As I got into this story, dude, it gets so nuts. Here you have a lady that basically made it all up and then is evaluating parental custody cases.
Jeez.
Like, it's one thing it's almost like on the level of Catch Me If You Can. You remember
That's exactly
that guy?
What I was thinking of.
Right?
Yep.
Where
exactly.
Some people lie a little bit on their resume, embellish some stuff here or there. But then you have people that get behind airplanes.
Yeah.
Perform surgery or all that stuff.
We've got a woman on Dancing with the Stars that has to wear an ankle monitor because she's a fraudster convicted of felony fraud. She's wearing an ankle monitor and we call her a star. So this is the state of our country today on October 4th. 2024.
Chris Osher is a senior investigative reporter with the Gazette, did a brilliant piece diving into this. I love the Denver Gazette. Great newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
He dove into this. This is a case that is going to take you on so many twists and turns. You're not going to want to miss it. He joins us just after the news. Let's bring it up, Billy.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. The Inspector General for DHS released a report this week admitting that several agencies did not fully assess risks of the millions of illegal migrants without ID that were released into the country. The heavily redacted report details that TSA, ICE, and CBP released millions of non-citizens into domestic flights based on lax security protocol. In fact, the report said that according to federal law, non-citizens without ID are not admissible into the country and shall be detained, but CBP and ICE are allowed to release them into the U.S. based on different circumstances, like self-reported info. The report said that, quote, neither CBP or ICE could determine how many of the millions of illegal migrants enter the country each year without identification. A big show coming up for you tomorrow on Salem News Channel's This Week on the Hill. You can catch Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who will talk about the CBS vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, and why everyone, including Democrats, were giving the victory to the senator from Ohio. Plus, Johnson will give us the 411 on Iran's ballistic missile attacks on Israel. That and so much more when you join us on Salem News Channel tomorrow for This Week on the Hill. Evangelicals for Harris launched another false attack ad against Trump using edited clips of the late Billy Graham. However, his son Franklin is not happy about it at all, saying his father wouldn't agree. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
Your KNUS forecast calls for continued unseasonably warm and dry weather conditions across the metro area in the central Rockies and the high plains. High temps for this Friday are sunshine, low to mid 80s. Not as cool overnight, lows low to mid 50s. Going to be a hot one for early October on Saturday. Fire weather watch in effect as well, highs near 90. Beautiful one Sunday for the Raiders-Bronco game, highs near 80.
Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us is Chris Osher. He's a investigative reporter, senior investigative reporter with the Gazette. Has this amazing piece about Shannon McShane, who was this former Colorado parental evaluator whose cases have now been all thrown into turmoil and chaos because she's basically made up her background and then decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump into custody cases. And she wrote some of the craziest things about these custody cases. It was a dad who was like, this isn't right. Stepped in. Incredible reporting. Chris, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, Chris. And did we get your last name right? Jeff and I were having a conversation. And if one of us, me, was smarter, I would have asked you about correct pronunciation of the last name beforehand. So sorry if we got it wrong. Did we do it right?
It's Chris Osher.
Osher. Okay, good. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh, Chris, detail this case for us about Shannon McShane.
Yeah, so we've been investigating the evaluation industry. These parental evaluators and really high conflict divorces get pulled in to help a judge make custody decisions at usually great cost to parents. It can cost tens of thousands of dollars for a parental evaluation report, and sometimes judges will just adopt the recommendations. This particular one we wrote about last year and just was indicted. Shannon McShane. The interesting thing was a magistrate last year found her report so flawed that he barred her from working in that judicial district up in Northeast Colorado. It was, she had made just bizarre claims he found, saying that a father who went by the name Sleepy Mellow, she said, might be indications of gang membership. She made a bunch of findings saying that, the home was dark, that he locked the kids in a room, wouldn't let them go out, that he only let them wear one color of clothing to go to school. And the magistrate reviewed the evidence, and the father had to spend something like $20,000. And he said, these claims that this parental evaluator is saying, that this custody recommendation that the mother in California get full custody, and there had earlier been an emergency hearing in which a district court judge had actually said the mother could take the kids based on some of McShane's report of what she believed was happening with the father across state lines to California and restrict the father's parenting time. Anyway, the magistrate finally got the case and he reviewed the evidence and he said, this is just complete bunk. The father, there's neighbors who testify he's a loving father, lets the kids out all the time. There's photographs of them wearing all sorts of colored clothing when they go to school. And in fact, he found that the mother was the one actually living with a felon who had been involved in gang activity and had actually gotten another child involved in a kidnapping situation. So the magistrate reversed the father had to spend $20,000 to get his children back, returned to him. Had been terrified he would lose contact with the children, but eventually the magistrate reversed everything, got the children back to Colorado, and said this parental evaluator is so biased and unfit for this work, I'm going to bar her from ever working in this judicial district again. And then he reported to the Colorado State Court Administrator's Office. But lo and behold, she continued working in judicial districts throughout the state. So she came into contact with one father who, again, just bizarre allegations. He had video of the mother throwing rocks at him. There was, evidence that the mother had bitten the child and talked about hitting the children. But yet Shannon McShane was saying she didn't believe, the father was, she was worried about the father's parenting and, wanted to reverse restrictions on the mother's parenting time. He started to explore her background and found out she didn't have a PhD from Hertfordshire College in England that she kept on purporting to have and that she had used to get her license to practice psychology in Colorado. And he reported this and just found it incredibly difficult for anyone to believe him. His own lawyer was almost like saying, hey, don't roil the waters on this. It could hurt you. And he reported to state regulators, to the Department of Regulatory Agencies, which is in charge of the licensing of psychologists in the state. And they began investigating. Shannon McShane, the parental evaluator, found out he had reported her. She just went after him, began in emails saying things to the lawyers like, he's worse than a murderer I counseled when I worked for the Colorado Department of Corrections that put bodies through wood chippers, and I don't think he's a fit father, and started calling his work and alleging he was stalking her. And eventually, regulators were able to determine, well, indeed, she did not have this college degree and should never have been licensed to be a psychologist, which she had used to both work at the Colorado Department of Corrections at a salary, I think, of around $90,000, and then had gotten another job at the state hospital for the criminally insane in Pueblo at a cost of about $100,000 a year as a psychologist. And anyway, she kept on lying about this in the court cases. And 4 months after the original magistrate had raised concerns about this particular parental evaluator and notified court officials of this, she finally was removed from the parental evaluator eligibility rosters and barred from doing this work. She continued to have her psychology license for a while before eventually surrendering that. And after we wrote these stories, the Colorado Attorney General's office began investigating, and they eventually actually did charge her criminally.
Talking with Chris Osher, he's the senior investigative reporter for the Gazette, about this wild story of Shannon McShane, who made up the idea she had a PhD, never attended the place, then decided that she's going to go and engage in custody cases, become a approved custody evaluator, and then just starts making up random things about dudes in these intense custody cases that sabotages their ability to see their children. One case, the kids get moved out of state, and it was a dad that finally started to pour into the background of this, but she had already been discovered to be a fraud by one case, or at least a nut job, maybe not a fraud, by one judicial district. So they're like, we're not working with her anymore. So she gets passed off to another one. And she's involved in these really intense emotional moments with these families. And she seems to just make stuff up. Did you get any sense as to why she would do this?
You know, first off, backing up, she was kind of equal opportunity on genders. I've had women who were involved in custody disputes say she also went after them. She accused one woman who had alleged domestic violence and actually gotten a restraining order based on that against her husband, of faking her injuries and dropping an iron on her face. Another one who had a video of her ex coming into the house and trying to rip her robe off. She said that that was a devious tactic on the mother's part to somehow film this incident, and she had only set up cameras because she was worried something like this would happen, because the ex-husband had been violent and done this type of thing in the past. So she went after both genders, actually. I will say, going through custody cases that Shannon McShane was appointed to, said she had this kind of bizarre thing where she would say, I employ lies to get to the truth. So in these custody disputes, these evaluators will interview your family members, your friends, people who might be able to say things about the situation that would help, guide custody recommendations. And she would just tell things that weren't true. Like, what would you say if I told you this individual had been involved in child sexual abuse? Or, what would you say if I said this person had narcissistic tendencies and had been fired from their job? And it wouldn't be true, but she would throw this stuff out there, thinking she would get some sort of response. The facts of the matter are that regulators, the Colorado Attorney General's office, court officials have now found she wasn't qualified at all to make these recommendations, and even had not disclosed that when she was a realtor back in Texas in 2016, she started being investigated for allegations that her real estate license should be revoked because she was pocketing rental money of rental properties she was managing instead of passing that on to the owner. And eventually her real estate license was revoked. But as that was going on, she moved to Colorado and was able to get this license to practice psychology. The Colorado Attorney General's office has investigated and found that you're required, when you get this license, to truthfully represent your credentials. She had said she had a psychology license from a school in England. The school in England said she never attended, and then in fact, records show, visa records show she never was in England during that time. So she didn't have a psychology license. And then she also, according to the indictment, falsified records to make it look like she had the hours of training and supervision that you're needed before you can actually become a psychologist. In other words, you're supposed to have some sort of mentor who supervises you for a set amount of time. And some of those individuals said, I don't know who this Shannon McShane is. I've never met her. Others said, well, I may have supervised her for a couple of hours, but, not the hundreds of hours she claimed in these forms she had been supervised. And I believe there's even indications that she might have forged their signature on some of these forms, according to the indictment.
Now, Chris Osher, senior investigative reporter with the Gazette, joining Jeff and Bill live. The biggest question I've got in this is, how did she possibly be able to continue to pull the wool over everybody's eyes over and over again? And what I'm sort of hearing in the narrative, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there were a whole bunch of people along the way that didn't bother to do their job, which would be check on her credentials and verify them. And what I'm hearing is that all of us should just go and immediately update our resume today, because obviously no one's checking jack. We can say whatever it is. I mean, today, Jeff could say that he is the backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos. He's wearing a nice jersey. It's a CSU, but still, I'm looking at the idea that it seems that especially in government, the people that are tasked with making sure we have the right people in charge and involved in evaluating things that are as important as custody and impact on the child, nobody bothered to check to see if this woman is who she said she is. Yet she's the person now responsible and checking on the parents. How in the heck did nobody in charge check on her credentials? Didn't even pick up the phone to say, hi, did she go to school here? That's a 60-second conversation, even though it's a long-distance call to England. No one made even the most basic phone call or email. How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I mean, you would think somebody would, if you're saying you got supervision hours, maybe you need to call the people who are allegedly supervising this person to get the psychology license and actually check to see if they actually signed off on these forms that are being submitted, or if somebody is purporting they have a PhD, you would think that there would be some due diligence to see if they actually attended the school that they claim they attended. This particular father was able to document these things and contact the school and find, and one of the telltale signs was she eventually submitted some transcripts saying, look, this shows I attended school. Well, they had letter grade, and in England, they don't use letter grade. And the school was like, these transcripts aren't anything we would actually use. But this father was just finding it very difficult for people to believe him. And as the parental evaluator, McShane was using his efforts against him to say, oh, he's disgruntled with me because I won't go with him 100% of the time. After she was removed from the eligibility rosters to do this work as a parental evaluator, she even went on a listserv for attorneys and said he had been cyber stalking her and alleged that he had gone to her house and scared her, which again, for this particular father who's, could lose, his rights to parent his children, this type of stuff can be used against him in court. It could, complicate his efforts to get legal representation. And this actually ended up becoming a criminal charge, according to the Colorado Attorney General's office, of retaliation against a witness. But he even, and part of this is that we found that, a parental evaluator, once they get on a certain number of cases, I've had a lawyer tell me it's almost like a God complex. Courts start to defer to the parental evaluator and really think that parental evaluator is this expert that's very learned and can go through these very difficult cases of whether a child's being abused. And judges just have a glut of family court cases. They give each side maybe 90 minutes to present these very complex, contentious custody case evidence. So they heavily rely on these parental evaluators, which again, I'll stress, cost parents money. It's not like taxpayers pay that money. It's like the parents going through a custody case. Once a parental evaluator is appointed, they have to pay it. And I've seen some cases where a parental evaluator costs as much as $80,000, and can even exceed legal fees for the parent. So what happens is, after a certain amount of these parental evaluators get to be, untouchable almost, and are really guiding, these custody decisions.
Chris Osher, senior investigative reporter with the Gazette, will continue to follow this case. It's a 15-count felony indictment against Shannon McShane. Just totally randomly made up her own background, then decided to become a custody evaluator, ended up in these contentious cases, wrote and made up reports on people that damaged their lives, ruined families. I just think it's amazing. And I don't know, Bill. I don't know if she'll get 9 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
15-count felony indictment against Shannon McShane. But Chris, thanks so much for taking time. Will you continue to update us on this case as it moves forward?
Sure. I'll be writing.
You can find all of this at denvergazette.com, which is the best newspaper in town, in my opinion.
Yeah,
denvergazette.com. Chris, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, and have a good weekend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Again,
was cool.
Chris Osher.
Yeah, now again, we got to go back to later today. Jeff is going to be updating his resume since nobody checks. He's now the backup quarterback for the Broncos, and I'm one of the co-founders of Amazon. It's fantastic. We also are going to add in our Nobel Peace Prizes that were just awarded just about an hour ago, since, again, nobody checks resumes.
Bill, think about this. I'm thinking about what Chris is talking about.
Yeah.
Here you have, remember the lady that just made up DNA stuff too?
Yeah. Yep.
And just screwed over all those cases. Yep. And then now they have to go back
after Jurinsky as well.
And then you have the one that went after Jurinsky.
Yes.
And then you got this lunatic who's like, I'm just going to write angry things about people in child custody cases. Yeah. This is what got me going on this, is like, bro, these are people's lives. These are kids' futures. And Shannon McShane just inserted herself with no education into them and wrote stuff that was totally false and just bro,
it's ridiculous.
And then I'll finish with this. She won't get 9 years. You want to make that bet? I want to make that bet. I bet she doesn't get 9 years.
I'd be curious. That's a good under-over to see if she gets 9 years like Tina Peters. That's a really good challenge, my friend. That's a really good challenge. Oh, my gosh.
All right, we'll get to the phone calls in a second. Billy, tell us about Balance.
We're going to have to get to the phone calls. We'll get to we see Francis. We see Joe. You guys have been hanging forever. We really appreciate you. We'll start talking Tina here in a second. But first, I want to spend some time talking about pain. I have been living with pain in my life, and the change over the last few months is nothing short of remarkable since I started working with Balance Wellspace. Balance Wellspace is an office of integrative medicine. That was a brand new term for me, but what does it mean for you? It means that you have a one-stop shop. You are able to visit one office, and they take care of chiropractic needs, neuropathic needs, physical rehabilitation, wave therapy, trigger point injections, some cutting-edge Star Trek level stuff that's non-invasive, and very important, that regenerative care. What does regenerative care mean? It means that you're using your own body's healing properties to help yourself out. They shot some stem cells into my left knee a couple of weeks ago. I'm sitting here as we talk, and I'm regenerating the meniscus that I torn over a decade ago. My left knee is now my stronger of my two knees. 6 months ago, no way. My left knee was giving out. I had pain every day. It felt like a lateral slice going through anytime I was carrying anything heavy. Now, it's fantastic. I have two easy for me to say, two vertebrae in the bottom of my back that are fusing together. And I'm also regenerating the disc that is separating, creating a cushion back there. I don't have the tingling. I don't have the numbness. I don't have the constant pain anymore. And that's the change they can make in your life. Balance Wellspace is a brand new office right across from Hangar 2 in Lowry. Plenty of parking and an amazing team will do a custom pain evaluation on you. You'll set goals with them, and then they'll go to work. And they will immediately start changing your life for the better. All non-invasive, all taken care of in just a one-stop shop. Imagine not having to drive all over the city, multiple different appointments to get certain things taken care of, that it's one stop. And plus, the team reevaluates your care every few weeks. They come back, they talk to you, they do another examination, and then they change course based on what's working and what isn't. It is simply remarkable, but they can't change your life until you reach out and you talk to them. BalanceWellSpace.com. BalanceWellSpace.com. Make an appointment, talk to Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess, Sarah B., the entire team, so that you can start living your life pain-free and getting back to the things you always wanted to do, but aren't because of what's happening with your body. Trust them. I trust them. They've done amazing work with me, but it can't start until you reach out. BalanceWellSpace.com. And when you give them a call, tell them you heard about them here on Jeff and Bill, because it helps us out a lot. Thanks.
Great to hear. We'll continue with conversations, all things Tina Peters, Shannon McShane, and just the bizarre state Jenna Griswold has put us in as well. So
this is going to be fun.
It is a morning, isn't it?
Is.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. People across the nation are speaking out after DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas announced that FEMA does not have the funds to get through the hurricane season. In fact, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody said every American should be outraged over the comment, pointing out that more than $1 billion has been spent on illegal migrants. America's First Legal said they're not feeling Mayorkas' complaint because FEMA has been spending money giving housing and services to illegals, while Texas Governor Greg Abbott pointed out that there is a simple solution to the problem. Immediately stop spending money on illegal migrants and redirect those funds to areas hit by the hurricane. The death toll from Hurricane Helene is at more than 200, with some inside sources saying that number could rise as high as 500. A big show coming up for you tomorrow on Salem News Channel's This Week on the Hill. You can catch Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who will talk about the CBS vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, and why everyone, including Democrats, were giving the victory to the senator from Ohio. Plus, Johnson will give us the 411 on Iran's ballistic missile attacks on Israel and what it means for the region. That and so much more when you join us on Salem News Channel tomorrow for This Week on the Hill. Planned Parenthood has a sex ed curriculum for schools that pushes abortion and prostitution while saying it's not really possible to abstain from sex. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
for a song.
It's a perfect song for today.
It is.
I'm gonna need a beer after this.
Oh, you need both. We can roll into the bar at 10:15 in the morning. No one's gonna look at us weird. And they're gonna go, "What are you doing in here?" We go, "Radio." I'm
Tina Peters, Jenna Griswold, Shannon
Yes.
McShane.
If that won't drive you to drink or force you to ask directions, I don't know what will. Oh man!
All right, let's go to the phone lines. Good morning, Joe Arvada.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff, Billy. Well, I listened to, of course, most of the Tina Peters case. I read almost all the exhibits because I was actively following, of course, Mike Lindell's exposés.
Yeah, what did you think?
Oh, well, now listening to Judge Barrett immediately reminded me of several other judges. Judge Chutkan, Judge Mershon, Judge Engeron. Judge Barrett is a liberal. If anybody doesn't know it, go investigate. Anyway, the point that I'm making is this: there was a bias in this case. Now, that said, do I believe, like Jeff, yes, Tina Peters was guilty of several things, including using a subordinate to do things that shouldn't have been done. I readily admit that Tina Peters did a couple of things that were, yes, beyond the law, and she should have been found guilty of doing those things. But in his expose of the case, Judge Barrett mentioned that he had other people in the court, like those poor people that sit over there in the morning and get convicted of rape and murder and all of those things. And they didn't have the upbringing of Tina Peters. Basically, I'll translate for you. They're not conservatives.
No, he pointed to privilege, Joe. You listened to it. You heard
privilege.
That.
That's right.
Yeah,
privilege.
It was nothing about conservative or liberal.
I understand that, but
he didn't address politics at all.
I'll translate it for you, Billy.
You're reading into something that he didn't say.
I'll translate it for you, Billy.
And it was a Republican DA.
Billy,
Joe.
don't interrupt me.
I can interrupt you if I want. My name's on the show. It's not the Joe from Arvada caller show. I'm sorry, they put my name on the show.
I understand, but I'm at least trying to make a point. You're just as rude as always.
I appreciate you. Go ahead, please. Make your point. We just gave you a couple minutes to make it, but keep going. Keep going.
Okay. Well, then let me finish. Let me wrap it up. This case is as bad as the $500 million decision by the idiot. Was it Engeron? Marchand's 34 counts of BS. That's what it was. And the Letitia James case where they found nonsense. Oh, that was the $500 million for doing a real estate loan. Every New York real estate mogul does it the same way. And this is also a case where there is no fairness under the law.
Okay, got a question for you, Joe. Got a question for you.
Just let me finish.
Did she do the crime? Did Tina do the crime?
That part I agree with, but...
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. That's it. That's all I needed from you, Joe. Appreciate it. Joe from Arvada calls back next week.
But he is pointing to some like just ridiculous punishments, like against Trump as well, where you're just like, whoa. And when you compare it, look, when you compare it to the fact that some people just get off way easier in this state, it doesn't seem fair.
Well, yeah, some people do. It isn't fair, but our judicial system isn't necessarily based on fairness.
I thought that has a blind lady with
I know, but that's
weights.
I know, but that's I know. But again, it's not, because you're looking at fairness being equity in sentencing. That's not what it's about at all. That's no.
Why
we
wouldn't you have
any
equity in sentencing?
Because certain circumstances are always going to be different. One person's attempted murder is not the same as the other person's attempted murder. One person's fraud isn't the same as another person's fraud. One person's speeding ticket isn't the same as someone else's speeding ticket. There has to be leeway inside of sentencing.
Still
and inside
9 years. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Francis Golden. Good morning, Francis. I got a question for you. Who's a greater threat to democracy, Jenna Griswold or Tina Peters?
Oh boy, I personally think they're almost on a par. I think Jenna Griswold. Here's the big problem. Jenna Griswold, just like Tina Peters, was elected. I mean, their threats. I think we have the ability to get out of there by not voting for them. Jenna Griswold will always be the punch bowl wherever she's at. That's her role in life. But yeah, so I think that it's just different types of on a par. I'll put them on a par. I mean, look at all the attention a clerk and recorder in Mesa County is getting for all of the crazy town stuff he did. I mean, and look all got. We're trying to keep Trump off that.
Francis, we're losing you. It's breaking up on you.
I'll come out.
We'll see if we can get you back. Yeah. Let's go to Marty, Denver. Good morning, Marty.
Hey, gentlemen. Great topic. This is a terrible day, not just in America, Colorado, to see Tina Peters go to 9 years. The reality is this, gentlemen, is that if you believe the results of the 2020 election, you either need a mental health examination or an IQ test. Tina Peters saw something she shouldn't have seen, and they're going to make her pay for that, just like Donald Trump. And if I hear another Democrat describe this desire to save the democracy, how many illegal aliens are going to vote in this election, Jeff? How many?
I hope not, but I'll be honest, I don't trust the system all that much.
We've seen littered all over the states where they're finding, we've got 10,000 illegally registered to vote, 100,000 coming off the rolls in Arizona and in Georgia. I mean,
but Marty, those aren't illegal aliens as you described them. Those are people that, for a variety of reasons, shouldn't have been registered to vote there anymore. A variety of reasons, not because they're illegal aliens. But let's go back to your interesting statement about the 2020 election. So you feel the 2020 election was absolutely stolen, correct?
I think the results were completely fabricated, resulting in Joe Biden winning.
Okay, now explain this
every
to me.
Day.
Okay, Marty, explain this to me. Why did Fox News write a $780 million check to Dominion instead of proving the voter fraud that you say is self-evident?
Do you think that Fox News is going all in on Donald Trump? They hate Donald Trump. He has said from the beginning he is anti-war. I won out of wars.
Okay,
Fox
hang on.
News
Wait, stop right there, Marty. Marty, hang on. Stop right there. So you're telling me that Fox News cut a $780 million check because they disliked Donald Trump? What the hell are you talking about?
Yes.
How does that make any sense? I'll give you a couple of minutes here, but please explain to me why Fox News would spend almost $800 million on a case with Dominion because they hate Trump?
Yes, and it's really simple. It looks like this. January 6th and this behavior around questioning the elections, it's taken so seriously because January 6th is the cover-up for what they did in November 2020. Okay, that's why they go hysterical about the grandmas going to jail who are there praying outside. That's why they shut you down. That's why Donald Trump is still facing all these 700 years in jail because of this. Now, stop right there. You say Fox News. I've never once gotten the instinct that Fox News is loyal to Donald Trump. Have you felt that way?
All right, Marty, let's say, hang on a sec. Why are you looking for a news outlet that is loyal to a political candidate? That doesn't seem to be hang on a sec. That doesn't seem to be the role of any outlet at all. But the question I'm going to come back to is
Nine News.
But hang on a sec. I understand that, but I'm saying the role. I'm saying that's not their role. I disagree with them. But what I'm coming back to, Marty, is the idea of the fraud that you say is self-evident. Why didn't Fox News provide the fraud? If you say it's self-evident and it's out there, and the January 6th was just a cover-up, that's fine, but you still are avoiding my basic question. Why didn't Fox News prove the election fraud that you say exists and instead write a nearly $800 million check? Why does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense in the sense like you just described. They don't owe Donald Trump the effort to prove he was right. They don't owe him that at all.
But wait, hang on. Marty, Donald Trump wasn't involved in the case. This was Dominion suing Fox, and you're leaping over to some issue over Donald Trump. No, the issue is Fox is a publicly traded company. They tanked their earnings from the last year and a half. They opened themselves up to a lawsuit from shareholders because of this lawsuit. They could have walked in and dropped all the proof that you say exists right there in front of them on the voter fraud, and the lawsuit disappears. They pay nothing, and they become the most dominant news organization in America, if not the world, because they are the ones that prove the fraud. And you say, no, they decided to cut the check. They decided to tank their earnings. They decided to piss off stockholders because they dislike Donald Trump. Really? Really?
No.
Sean Hannity sits down with him all the freaking time, but they hate Trump. That's your conclusion.
Well, they hate the MAGA movement. That is not what they do.
No, they don't. Marty. How many times has Sean Hannity sat down with Trump? This is silly. Come back to Fox News. Why did Fox News not prove the fraud you say exists? Where's the fraud? Ignore Trump. Trump's not part of this conversation. Where's the fraud, Marty? Why doesn't Fox News show up with it?
Well, whether or not Fox News is going to pursue this to the ends of the earth, the fraud took place when those 7 states changed their state constitution illegally and closed in the middle of the night.
No, it was done legally. It was done legally.
Bullcrap.
It was done legally, Marty, and it was done by, in some cases, conservative legislatures. Yes.
And
Sorry. You may
we
dislike the rule changes, but the rule changes were there. We have Republicans trying to change the rules and how the votes were counted and appropriated for the Electoral College in Nebraska just within the last 3 weeks. And that's within 45 days before the election. No, you're talking about people changing rules in order to change the outcome of election. I doubt you think that the Republicans are doing something untoward in order to steal an election, but yet you're hanging that jacket on someone else. And the thing you keep ignoring, Marty, and I appreciate the call, and you cannot have an answer for, is the fact that Fox News wrote a nearly $800 million check instead of proving the fraud you said existed.
Yeah, and I get frustrated because I think conservatives put themselves in a bizarre cul-de-sac trying to argue that the scoreboard changed.
Yep.
Right? That we put in a ballot and the algorithm or whatever.
Yeah.
Beep, beep, boop,
of
boop,
which
boop.
nothing's been ever
and
proven.
then right, exactly. But I think you can absolutely make legitimate arguments about the rules themselves and whether or not the game is fair.
Here's the thing.
Those rules.
As long as both teams have to play by the same rules, it's fair. That's the rule. That's a bottom line of it. And we've changed the kickoff rules.
Let's talk about
but we've changed the
IDs
kickoff
and
rules.
voting.
We changed the kickoff rules in the NFL. Both teams have to play under them.
Yeah,
same thing.
I don't know if I agree with you that just because the rules are written down and both teams have to play with them, that the game is still fair. Like, for instance, with IDs. Like, the fact that the left fights that so hard, right? One, just smells suspicious to me.
Yeah.
But then 2, they continue to want to have a game that plays in their favor. And that means we don't check IDs of people who vote.
And Republicans want a game that is leaning in their favor. And the Broncos want a game that is leaning in their favor. And the Raiders want a game that's leaning in their favor.
But just because the rules are written down doesn't mean necessarily that the game is fair.
Well, when both teams have to play by the same rules.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you passed a rule that said, well, we're up against a break here, but I think you can absolutely, if one team, for instance, specializes in running, and you write the rules where you can't run, well, that doesn't make it fair to the team that specializes in running.
But they have an opportunity to do something else as well, and they may specialize in it, and it may not be what these rules say anymore. There are all sorts of things.
But I have a question as to whether or not the rules actually make for the most free and fair elections. I don't know. I think you can debate that.
That's a different conversation.
Okay.
But we can debate that later.
Look, Colorado Christian University invites you to an exclusive luncheon and lecture on Friday, November 15th, featuring the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, and his wife, former Second Lady, Karen Pence. In partnership with the Centennial Institute and CCU President Eric Hogue, this event offers a unique opportunity to engage in conversation with Vice President Pence, one of America's most dedicated public servants, sharing his insights on the future of the conservative movement. Remember, this is going to be after the election. Be interesting analysis. Be among the first to experience the new Armstrong Center as CCU launches its President Speaker Series on this historic occasion. Go to ccu.edu/Pence to get tickets and learn more. Limited tickets are available for breakfast with Karen Pence, lunch with Mike Pence, and morning and evening lectures. Throughout the day, you'll engage in conversations on leadership, faith, and service with these distinguished guests. Please join CCU on November 15th for these events with Mike and Karen Pence. Go to ccu.edu/Pence to get tickets and learn more. That's ccu.edu/Pence. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Continue the conversation about Tina Peters. And now into the mix of all things legal, brought to you by two guys who aren't lawyers. Chris Murray, partner of First and 14th Law, is going to talk about the Jack Smith indictment that was, quote, unsealed right before an election. Fantastic. So he can defend himself in court. Not really. But here we are. We'll get into that with Chris Murray more. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, October 4th. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. We are having it all today. My goodness, Matt Crane, Jimmy Stangenberger, Chris Osher, now Chris Murray, plus all your calls and texts about the Tina Peters case. And now we're going to throw into the mix a little bit. We'll still take calls on Tina Peters, but the Jack Smith case that had the indictment unsealed as they're trying to debate whether or not one aspect falls under presidential immunity versus another aspect that falls outside of it, and what can Donald Trump be tried on? And should this have been released this close to an election? Is this just election interference? Because you get one side of the case. We're not going to go to court in time. You're not going to hear the Donald Trump response to this. Is that fair? Want to get your calls and texts on that as well. We'll get to Chris Murray in just a second. Up first, the news.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Kamala Harris is offering $750 to people impacted by Hurricane Helene to use on essential items like food, water, and other emergency supplies. However, many are speaking out that the amount she's offering is an insult, considering that the administration just announced $8 billion in funding for Ukraine and is spending nearly $1 billion on taking care of illegal migrants. Others who have lost everything because of the Category 4 hurricane are saying they actually applied for the $750, but were
KNUS forecast calls for continued unseasonably warm and dry weather conditions across the metro area in the central Rockies and the high plains. High temps for this Friday are sunshine, low to mid 80s. Not as cool overnight. Lows low to mid 50s. Going to be a hot one for early October on Saturday. Fire weather watch in effect as well. Highs near 90. Beautiful one Sunday for the Raiders-Bronco game. Highs near 80.
Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 303-219-0088. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Gabe's telling us that he's going to stretch out our jerseys when he puts it on Monday.
Yes. We got to tell all of our listeners here on the Jeff and Bill Show about a bet that we have made with the listeners. So whatever sort of good vibes, prayers, juju, beads, whatever you got, we need your help because we need our Broncos to come through with a victory. Otherwise, Jeff and I are going to have to take pictures in Raiders jerseys. We have made this online bet with one of our listeners, Gabe, big Raiders fan, big fan of the show. We tease each other all the time back and forth. And we decided since it is the big game on Sunday, it's Raiders week here in Broncos country. And Jeff and I have decided to put what dignity we have on, Jeff's dignity on the line. Mine, I have nothing left. I have nothing left. So we're putting Jeff's dignity on the line. I have him in a Raiders jersey. I will as well, only if our Broncos lose. If not, Gabe's going to have to wear a Broncos jersey. Yes. And we are going to take pictures and we'll share them and we'll see what we can do. And Jeff will share them
Here's
online.
the one solace I have. I like Al Davis.
Yeah.
I like the way that guy rolled, man.
I do too.
The bigger, the bolder.
Yeah.
So, Gabe,
and
bring anything Al Davis related.
Yeah. And Kenny the Snake Stabler, great quarterback. Great quarterback.
You just like this.
I do too, but he just, the way he played. I really admire the way that he played. There was something really kind of special about what he did, and he led the Raiders. And I'm tired of, for the last 8 games, our Broncos taking it in the mush. So we really need any sort of help. If there's any sort of thing you do during the Broncos game to make sure the Broncos win, we need you to do it twice as hard this weekend, please. Please, 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 because we don't want to wear Raiders jerseys.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
and
please.
Broncos haven't won the last 8 matchups. So
yeah, that's how smart we are making this bet. That's intelligent level here at the show. Yes.
Oh, seize those moments.
Yes.
All right, joining us now is Chris Murray. He's a partner with First and 14th Law. So in light of all the things yesterday, and believe me, we've had a fun morning with Matt Crane and Jimmy Sengenberger talking about Tina Peters in the midst of all the legal stuff going on. We're going to throw in now this January 6th related case with Jack Smith. So on Wednesday, 165-page court filing was unsealed in their 4-count felony prosecution against Donald Trump and his actions leading up to and during the January 6th activities. So to provide some analysis for us, smart attorney I know, Chris Murray. Good morning, Chris.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, fellas. And it's the 9 a.m. hour on a Friday when we were talking about Kenny Stabler.
Yes.
That's exactly right. So, Chris, what they're from my analysis, what they're trying to dive into is what falls under presidential immunity and what doesn't. But why was this released publicly? It wasn't a decision made. I don't understand. Help me understand that.
Look, so I actually don't think that you need a lawyer to tell you why this was released publicly. There was no reason this had to be released publicly. Did there need to be a new version of the indictment? Oh, absolutely. Because after the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity, the prosecutors had to take a cut at, hey, what do we think is clearly official conduct? What do we think is clearly private conduct that he's not immune for? And what's the stuff in the middle that the court's going to have to make a ruling on? So updating the indictment insofar as this prosecution is fair at all, right, is fair game. But releasing it publicly, I think this being put out publicly was designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that's put a thumb on the scale of the election.
I mean, those are strong words, Chris, because we're dealing with a judiciary that's supposed to be independent.
Well, I agree, but I still, I cannot fathom, right? There's no reason why this indictment had to be made public in order to allow for the judge to make this decision. Now, there's going to be the fig leaf that, there might be amicus parties, friends of the court, who could help the court with that. And, only if they concede the superseding indictment can they provide amicus briefs. But to my mind, nobody on the president's side was asking for this to be unsealed so that he could solicit amicus support. And, just look at the coverage this has been getting. I really have a hard time thinking of another reason why it was released.
Talking with Chris Murray, he's a partner with First and 14th Law. Another question I want to ask you is how much of this is actually a crime? So you speak of coverage, for instance, Huffington Post, Trump's response when he learned Pence's life was in danger. So what? Can you be convicted of a response to like that? I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around what the crime was.
Well, and again, let's talk about where you can be convicted of something like that in the court of public opinion, right? You can be convicted of that by voters, right, who decide that they think it matters. I really do think that is at least part of the reason for those allegations. There's a lot of sort of hyped up storytelling in this indictment that, what this indictment really comes down to now is it's just more of the same, the conspiracy to put in fake electors stuff that we've all heard about, right? With a ton of dramatic storytelling around January 6th and a lot of window dressing. And I don't think that you could be convicted for, not being suitably concerned to Jack Smith's eye about what's going on at the Capitol in the right way at the right time. But you can use it again to tell sort of a salacious story that gets released in the public 1 month before an election.
Now, Chris Murray, partner with First and 14th, joining Jeff and Bill live. Could we make the argument that the crime was the plan that was fomented with a lot of, as Jack Smith has outlined, private individuals, private campaign personnel, private lawyers, foment a plan to overturn the election? That's why the fake electors were involved. That's why we have the January 6th speeches. That's why all of this was leading to a moment. And that moment was for Mike Pence to reject the electors and send it back to the states and then have Donald Trump stay in power, despite all the evidence that even according to Jack Smith, Donald Trump had in front of him that showed he didn't win the election. Isn't that the underlying crime?
That is absolutely the underlying crime. And they're absolutely, I mean, there's a legal theory there, Bill, right? But the indictment here, right? There's a whole host of allegations in the indictment that I don't think are necessary, right, to carry the day on that crime. I mean, there's whole hosts of allegations in here that are necessary. Allegations about, again, what President Trump knew and when he knew it about the different challenges to election results in different states. Hey, insofar as this is a potential crime, that's fair game. Same thing, what he knew about the plans to try and put alternate slates of electors in place, and when he knew it. That's all fair game insofar as this is potentially a crime. Some of the dramatic storytelling, though, about, again, like to Jeff's point about, was President Trump suitably concerned about his vice president, right? The only plausible reason to include that would be to say, well, it's because the plan was to put pressure on him to make sure that the plan goes through. And I just don't think that that's plausibly pled in the indictment.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that Jack is running what I would say a spread offense, and it's a debate term, but also a sporting term where you try to cover as much of the field as you possibly can. You try to spread everything out and put as much on the table, hoping that the defense can't cover everything, that something's going to slide through. That's kind of what I see in that one. Now, I want to go back a little bit on the election influence. I like what you said about that, and I can concede that the reason this appears now is election influence. But what I'm curious about is whether or not that is, and I'm using air quotes, wrong. And the way I'm going to phrase this is, if we had an indictment alleging that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris had been taking bribes from China or Ukraine or all the stuff that Biden had been accused over the last couple of years, the Biden crime family. If we had a sealed indictment that was 35 days before an election, I'm pretty certain there's a whole group of people that have ours by their names that would be screaming, we have to let this out and at least see what the indictment says, because the voting population deserves to have that knowledge before casting a ballot. Now, I'm certain that the Democrats are making that same argument about this indictment with Trump. And now, Chris Murray, First and 14th partner, why is that wrong?
Well, I mean, so I'll say here's why it's maybe it's not wrong, right? But it's just another drop in the ocean, right, of a deterioration of our country's political climate. Do you remember when the Department of Justice used to have a policy to say, hey, look, we're not going to put our finger, right, on the scale before an election?
Good times. Yes, those are much better times. Well, yes.
Yes. That used to be DOJ policy. You're darn right, Bill, that now that this has been done, people with ours by their names, including me, right, are going to say, yeah, if you've got a sealed indictment for the other side, you better play it the same way, because this thing was sealed for so long, right?
Yep.
And then you decide, oh, now it has to be unsealed 35 days before an election? Come on. It doesn't pass the smell test. And I'll also say, I actually think that's why this is going to end up being ineffective, right? If this was unsealed from the beginning, if it was always, hey, look, we think this needs to be public, we think it needs to be out there, let the cards fall where they will, it would still seem like a pretty political prosecution. But by now, everybody would know this is out there, and everybody would have been free to argue one way or another on it, right? By dropping it now, it's clearly an attempt to amplify the effect of this on the election. And I think that's what's going to, it's unfortunately, I'll bet, going to do the opposite. it's going to make a lot of people say, all right, well, I see what the DOJ is trying to do here, and it cheapens the DOJ, right? Even if you think that Jack Smith is really trying to do a public service here by letting this out, and that the court is trying to do a public service by allowing this to be unsealed, I'll tell you that there's a huge swath of the public that is not going to see it that way.
Yeah, I think you're 110% right. I don't think this is going to have the impact that many Democrats believe it will. I think it's going to go the other direction.
Did we learn anything new?
Yeah, there's some things that are new there.
Yeah,
There are a couple of
what's
things.
new in it?
The two things, and I'd love to have Chris's take on this one. There were two things. Again, I haven't been able to get all the way through it. It's a long read.
165 pages.
Yeah, and there's some things I got to go back and got to go through things a couple of times to make sure I understand the case that Jack's making, because there are times that I don't see the dots he's trying to connect. But two things that I thought were interesting that we learned, and I would love to have Chris's reaction as to how important these could be going forward in any sort of a criminal prosecution. The one is the assertion by Jack Smith that while Trump was supposedly going around checking on election interference, and it's the call to Raffensperger in Georgia, it's the call to the people in Michigan, it's the call to people in Wisconsin, that he was looking for and making sure that we did have election integrity. We've heard that for months, that Trump was only making sure the elections were secure. Yet, according to Jack Smith, Trump never asked about any allegations of fraud. He only pushed, we need to count again, we need to find votes. He came with a conclusion, not a question about an accusation of fraud. How does that play inside of this possible criminal case?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I agree that. So I guess I'll talk about how it plays first, right? I think that why those allegations are being made is Jack Smith is trying to say, look, there's not an official reason for these calls, right? Remember, President Trump is immune for any plausibly official act, right? So if a president is calling around saying, look, all I really want to know is, was the election secure? Just tell me that it was secure, right? How do we know it was secure? If that's what he was doing, shoot, that's kind of what you might expect the president to do, right?
Yeah.
After a really close election, and that could plausibly be seen as an official act. Whereas if, on the other hand, he's saying, hey, we need to find the votes, find me 10,000 more votes, right? And that's all he's doing. That starts to not sound that official. So I think that's the reason for those allegations. I will say, I'm just not sure how new that is. I mean, we've all heard the allegations from Raffensperger, right? The breathless allegations about the tape phone call where he says, hey, we need to find those votes, find me the 10,000. Like, that recording is out there. I mean, everybody's heard that recording. So I don't know how terribly new it is, but as far as what's the reason for making those allegations, I think it is to say these calls, the way they went, they were all about a non-official act and about seeking private benefit.
Yeah, I think that's the way he's going to go with them. And it's not necessarily totally new information, but I think the fact that he points out that he wasn't searching for voter fraud, but had assumed that he needed to make changes in the vote tally in order to win, I think may be good. But the other one I was curious about is one, we found out that apparently Trump might have a secret phone. Jack Smith uncovered, it seems to be in the documents, a phone that wasn't necessarily recorded inside of the ledger of what Trump had access to as far as phones, because he talks about on January 6th that Trump was watching a phone, his phone, and he was watching Fox News at the time. And this is what I want to ask you about, is how it plays out, is the narrative that Smith lays out. We don't know if we can prove this in court, but the narrative he lays out is that the January 6th riots are going on. And Mike Pence has said that, again, publicly, he's not going to overturn the election. The Capitol is breached. And at the moment the Capitol is breached, within 60 seconds, Donald Trump sends out a tweet about Mike Pence not doing the right thing. He didn't stand up and make the choice to save America. Yet he just was told, the president was just told the Capitol had been breached and that even a police officer had been hit or assaulted at that time. And the response that he makes on January 6th, the very next communication that he makes, is denigrating his vice president for not taking an action that he wanted. How is that going to play? What's that going to do?
Well, again, I mean, I think that this is part of Jack Smith's, allegation that, hey, look, Trump wanted some portion, at least, of what happened on J6 to happen, right? He wanted this. and was sort of fomenting the chaos that went on there. And this was sort of his cudgel, right, to use to make Mike Pence do what he wanted Mike Pence to do, right, which is to allow the states to a reason to put different elector slates in place to throw it back to them. And that when he didn't do that, right, he did this all really fast because, boy, this was this great, huge conspiracy to just overthrow the government and overturn the election. And that's why he had a secret phone, so that he could communicate really quickly, real time, when his foot soldiers got into the Capitol, right? And he could let them know that, hey, you guys need to act because Mike Pence is not on board. And because because Twitter is the way he communicates with them. It's a hell of a story. I'll just be shocked if he's able to prove it.
I would agree. I would be shocked if he's able to prove that one. Now, for me, my takeaway, and I'd love to know what your largest takeaway was as you worked through the indictment. Again, I'm not all the way through, but my largest takeaway was how effective Jack Smith was at least creating a narrative that these were private lawyers, private campaign workers, private advisors, not public officials outside of Mark Meadows and Pence that were involved in anything as far as the conspiracy. So for me, I was struck with how well Smith had gone through and said, no, he talked to the private lawyer about this. The public people, the government employees told him that he lost the election, and here's the results of these studies. And then he turns to the private advisors and the private campaign staff, and those are the people that end up implementing the plan. In fact, even going far enough, there's a portion in there where Ronna McDaniel tells Trump that his election conspiracy theories about the election being stolen are completely nuts. She pushes back and says, no, we're not going to be doing this, despite the fact that Ronna did help with some of the implementation of the fake electors. So that's my biggest takeaway, is how well Jack had drawn the narrative. Again, can he prove it? But drawn the narrative of the private involvement of Trump and his staff, because that then takes him out of that immunity bubble. What were your thoughts? What did you take away from it?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say my biggest takeaway, right, from this is, I guess maybe it's related to your takeaway, but my biggest takeaway is, look, remember, the Supreme Court just had a big decision on presidential immunity. Jack Smith disagrees with it, right? It was a blow to his case. But the Supreme Court said, hey, look, unquestionably official acts, he's immune. Acts that are, like seem official, right, but aren't necessarily in the constitutional duties of the presidency. Hey, that's all case by case. And then, of course, private stuff he's not immune for. And my takeaway from reading this was maybe not how well Jack Smith did it, but how careful he has been, right, to try to make everything he possibly can private, right? He is trying to make, to cabin, using this case, right, presidential immunity as much as he possibly can. And so, I think in Jack Smith's view, and you'd expect this from Jack Smith, tie goes to private conduct. Close call goes to private conduct. And let me show you how, because not even leave aside the public officials, I think his point in several places, right, to even like separate off Republican National Committee personnel, right, who those folks don't have official administration capacities, right, but just try and say, hey, look, this is a tiny little world of people. It's okay, right? This was all private, but if you rule for me on all of this stuff, don't worry. It's not going to affect future presidents, because look at how this was all private. It was all private. It was all private. So I think he's trying to grab with both hands on saving as many charges as he can, while trying to signal to the court, and especially higher courts, that it's okay to let him do this, because the fact pattern here is so bizarre.
Talking with Chris Murray, he's a partner with First and 14th Law. So, Chris, big news coming out yesterday. Tina Peters sentenced combined 9 years behind bars. You that for election integrity. You've been on cases that have fought those. And I want to live in an America where elections are challenged, scrutinized, and transparent. I think that's fine. In the sentencing that took place yesterday, the judge brought up the notion of questioning elections is fine, but at a certain point, you cross a threshold. I want to talk about that threshold. We had Matt Crane on earlier today, and Matt Crane brought up the fact that other county clerks raised concerns about the 2020 election, but went about it differently. So we're sitting the day after a sentencing for 9 years. I think a lot of people want transparent, fair, scrutinized elections, challenged if they need to be. That's fine. No one cares about that. Democrats in 2016 raised concerns about elections. Tell me from your perspective, where
Democrats have been raising concerns about elections since the Diebold machine supposedly got Bush elected in 2004.
Right.
It started with them.
So where's the line from your perspective as an election law attorney where someone starts to cross over into criminal conduct like Tina Peters did?
So I think it's pretty, I think it's pretty simple, right? And I will say that, I think the sentence against Tina was, that is a harsh sentence. And I'm not sure that I agree with the length of that sentence. While I am, I've been on the record as being against her conduct in this case, right? But I think that sentence is a hell of a sentence. I'll say that I think the line is, if in order, right, to scrutinize an election, to challenge an election, to shine light on an election, you as a public official, right, or even as an observer or as a party official or as a lawyer, you have to start lying to do that. That's where the line is, right? And here, Tina Peters, she lied, right, to get somebody who wasn't authorized to have access to this trusted build access to it, right? She started out the right way by asking for permission to have somebody there. And then when the Secretary of State said no, right, you can argue with that decision, right? You can say Jenna Griswold wasn't within her rights to say no, right? But then there's a way to fight that, right? Take her to court, right? Be honest and upfront about what you're trying to do, and let the arguments for more public exposure of this see the light of day, and let the public decide on that, let a court decide on that. Don't lie, right? And sneak somebody in, right? And do something that you've been ordered not to do.
Chris Murray, 1st and 14th Law, thanks so much for providing some great legal analysis for two dudes who are just scrambling around trying to figure it out ourselves.
Thank you so much.
But you're a great gift to our listeners. Chris, always appreciate you. Thanks so much. If you want to learn more about 1st and 14th Law, you can by visiting 1st-14th.com. 1st-14th.com, one of the most premier legal firms in Colorado. Chris Murray,
you want to get someone's attention, you send them letterhead that says 1st and 14th on top. That'll get someone's attention.
Well, I appreciate it, guys, and good luck with that jersey bet.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you, man. Have a great weekend.
Chris Murray. Look, I want to talk to you about another one of my great friends over at Mountain High Appliance. They've cooked up some tasty deals for your kitchen. Now, for a limited time, receive up to a $3,000 rebate with the purchase of qualifying GE Cafe appliances. Enjoy the Mountain High Appliance price match guarantee and their special financing options. Visit one of their 4 locations for all the details and upgrade your kitchen with GE Cafe appliances in Denver at East 64th, Littleton, Louisville, Glenwood Springs, Mountain High Appliance. Experience the difference. All right, we'll get to your calls and texts about Jack Smith, about Tina Peters, about Jenna Griswold. My goodness, we've got a country to save. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Kamala Harris is offering $750 to people impacted by Hurricane Helene to use on essential items like food, water, and other emergency supplies. However, many are speaking out that the amount she's offering is an insult, considering that the administration just announced $8 billion in funding for Ukraine and is spending nearly $1 billion on taking care of illegal migrants. Others who have lost everything because of the Category 4 hurricane are saying they actually applied for the $750 but were denied. JR JR ran 1685, posting his application and denial pictures to social media saying, "This is my town. I was denied the $750 from FEMA. How does the VP and leading Democratic nominee come to my town and announce a pathetic $750 payment and I get denied? Make it make sense," he said. Hurricane Helene's death toll is now at more than 200 and is expected to rise high. At this hour, I'm Christina Weil in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Kamala Harris is offering $750 to people impacted by Hurricane Helene to use on essential items like food, water, and other emergency supplies. However, many are speaking out that the amount she's offering is an insult, considering that the administration just announced $8 billion in funding for Ukraine and is spending nearly $1 billion on taking care of illegal migrants. Others who have lost everything because of the Category 4 hurricane are saying they actually applied for the $750 but were denied. JR ran 1685, posting his application and denial pictures to social media saying, "This is my town. I was denied the $750 from FEMA. How does the VP and leading Democratic nominee come to my town and announce a pathetic $750 payment and I get denied? Make it make sense," he said. Hurricane Helene's death toll is now at more than 200 and is expected to rise higher as searchers make their way toward the hardest to reach places in the mountains of western North Carolina, where the storm washed out roads and knocked out electricity, water, and cell service to many. Officials in Georgia and North Carolina added to their state's tallies on Thursday, padding an overall count that has already made Helene the deadliest storm to hit the U.S. since Hurricane Katrina in 2005. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Wyo, Salem News Channel.
All right, it's late in the show on a Jeff and Bill's Friday, and we're
having so much fun off the air. There are times in which the off-air show should be on-air show. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. We still got full phone lines. Let's go to Francis, who has been on this phone line forever. Thank you, Francis. You're a great American.
That's right, I am. No, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Online, I'm running a couple errands and getting stuff done. Hey, you know what I think sums up some of this stuff?
What?
In your own movie, you're always the star, right? But here's what the problem is. Sometimes that starring role is as a villain. That's where
we lost Francis again.
Francis, we're losing your phone.
The
I don't know what the
audio
cell phone is.
is
And
not
you didn't call
working.
back before, so we tried to reconnect to the cell phones. Oh no! Here, tell me what. Try to call me back again, Francis, and we will see if we can bring you up yet again.
All right, let's go to Ben. Good morning, Ben.
Morning.
Yeah, so you're talking about kind of two different things, Jack Smith and Tina Peters.
Yep.
In both cases, first of all, Jack Smith, I'd equate to the same thing that happened with Hillary Clinton in 2016, where, he honestly needs to release that information so the American public knows it. And if he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't, because if he withholds that information, people are going to be mad afterwards. And if he releases it now, the American public honestly deserves to know that. And it sounds like Donald Trump flubbed. He flubbed and was just botched January 6th, based on the information that we currently know.
Do you think that's communicated, that he botched it? I mean, all the articles. I mean, headline from the HuffPost: Trump's response when he learned Pence's life was in danger. So what? I mean, that's not just botched. I think what the media is trying to make him out to be is that he orchestrated it in an effort to benefit from it.
He sat in the office for 3 hours and was apathetic about it. I mean, a real president would actually sit there and say, "Oh, shoot."
Didn't he tweet out, create a video, go out there and try to tell folks to simmer down now?
Not timely. He just sat in his office for a while and just, twiddled his thumbs. Oh, so what? Mike Pence might get killed. Who cares? I don't care if these people are storming the Capitol. I mean, that's a pretty weak version of a president in my perspective. Pretty weak man. And then Tina Peters. Tina Peters is getting what she deserved. She was a person that flagrantly violated the law. I mean, there was so many other avenues she could use to actually adjudicate her case, and she didn't go through any of those. Instead, she falsified IDs, snuck in here, turned off surveillance video cameras. So it's pretty flagrant criminal activity what she's doing. And then the stuff that she did.
Do you think 9 years is right? Do you think that's justified?
Well, the stuff that she's done has cost basically the county over $1 million, $1.4 million, I think, just in legal fees. And then replacing those machines those are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's put it like this. Like, if I went over and I knew that you weren't in your home and you had a $2 million home and I burnt that down, would 9 years be appropriate for that? Because that's basically what it's costing the taxpayer.
Arson, though, and a threat to people's lives. I mean,
I
don't disagree with Tina Peters being sentenced or convicted, but these were nonviolent. And
but if I
she's
know
a
you're not
nonviolent
in
person.
there, but if I know you're not in there, and I burn down the home,
yeah, I still think it's different.
$2 million.
But help me understand. I understand your frustration with Tina Peters. I get it. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. Are you equally frustrated with Jenna Griswold?
No.
Why not?
Why should I be frustrated with her?
So if Jenna had gotten her way with the lawsuit against, with the effort to remove Donald Trump from the ballot, she would have fundamentally changed democracy in this country. She would have allowed secretaries of state without conviction to remove duly elected people from the ballot. And that would have thrown this country into chaos. It's why she lost 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, there's a little bit in there that I do have to correct a little bit. Is
that got adjudicated?
But then the original lawsuit was filed against Griswold. That's who it was filed against. There were two Republicans. It was 2 Republicans or 6 people. It was 2 Republicans
but
and
then
Democrats.
She went on to join them and to make case at the U.S. Supreme Court,
at the U.S. Supreme Court,
at the state Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court.
But she didn't file suit or do something proactively here in Colorado to remove Trump from the ballot. When it went to the Supreme Court, she did join and say, "I think he should be barred from this."
Yes.
But she did not take the affirmative action to bar him, nor did she start the court case. She was the one that was sued originally. She had to defend herself, and that was what the ruling was. The Colorado Supreme Court.
Personally, I think that's a distinction without a difference. But I think Jenna Griswold is a major threat to democracy.
Well, that's kind of silly because the job of the Secretary of State is to support the positions that have already been confirmed by the Colorado legislature. And so if a court goes through and says this, it's her job to defend those cases, whatever they may be, whether she agrees with them or not. So that's what happened. Is court cases already came through. They agreed that Donald Trump should have been barred. So it's at that point, it's her job to defend those cases. That's how the Secretary of State works.
No, I think she could have easily opposed that and said, "We don't agree with this, and we're going to fight it." There was no mandate for her to remove Donald Trump from the ballot and to continue to carry on those cases.
Well, that's wrong. I mean, the job of the Secretary of State is to defend things that have already been confirmed in Colorado courts.
So your argument is that Jenna Griswold is completely innocent in an effort to remove Donald Trump from the ballot.
She's someone that is defending the current Colorado state courts. It's a court case that was filed by people that were not her, and you're trying to blame her for it.
Because she went to the U.S. Supreme Court. She went to the U.S. Supreme Court to argue it. And then she claimed that it was a good lawsuit. And she went out there and defended it and said, this lawsuit is a good thing. Donald Trump deserves to be removed from the ballot.
He did try to steal an election. He did try to circumvent the will of the voters. I mean,
when was he convicted?
Not up for debate.
I'm sorry, when was he convicted for that?
Oh, he's on pace for that, but
so we're removing people from the ballot that haven't been convicted. And you want to imprison Tina Peters for being a threat to democracy.
Well, Jeff, you know what? You're trying to avoid the court case by getting him elected into president, because do you know what? If he goes to court, he might get convicted.
No, what I'm pointing out, Ben, is that, Ben, you are selective in your outrage about threats to democracy. You're willing to give Jenna Griswold a pass on that. If she had been successful with the U.S. Supreme Court, you would have fundamentally changed this nation. She was not.
Well, Jeff,
9-0, she lost. Okay? And you're happy to send Tina Peters to jail for 9 years, but you're going to give Jenna Griswold a pass on something that is arguably far worse for this country.
Well, guess what, Jeff? Because Tina Peters actively committed crimes. She falsified IDs. She turned off security cameras.
I'm not saying that Tina Peters is innocent, but you seem to want to make Jenna Griswold innocent.
Committed.
She
Jenna
tried
Griswold,
to remove somebody from a ballot without due process. It's a threat to democracy, and it should be a crime.
Well, guess what, Jeff? Here's the reality. Donald Trump tried to steal an election. He did commit crimes. And you know what? Those are in litigation right now. And you're just mad because
convicted.
Those haven't finished.
So, yeah, you're happy to find somebody guilty before a trial and remove them from a ballot. Congratulations. You're a great defender of democracy. All right. Speaking of good lawyers, I want to get to my good friend Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. Dan suggests that you should choose a lawyer who shares your values because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer. He's a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But more than just being a great guy on the values, he's a real winner in the courtroom. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, give him a call at 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551 or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS law.com. We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
absolutely fire show today. If you missed any of it, you missed a heck of a conversation. We dove into the Tina Peters case. Matt Crane, Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, joined us, gave his take. Jimmy Stengenberger, who is live in studio or in the courtroom, gave us his perspective as well. And he and I got into a really good conversation right there at the very end. We may have to continue this.
Good.
I mean, we grant that Tina Peters is guilty, should be sentenced, but is the sentence too tough? And what about Jenna Griswold and her effort to undercut democracy? All of it covered and debated today, including Chris Smith joining us, as well as Chris Osher from the Gazette. So it was a fire show. If you missed it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Have a great weekend.